Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is My Neighbor Waves at Me Every Night from Inside a Dark Apartment. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. The first time I noticed it, I was standing barefoot on my kitchen tile with a spoon in one hand and my phone in the other, watching the microwave count down like it was going to make a decision for me. 38 seconds. Outside, the courtyard lights in our complex blinked once, just once, like a stutter, then held steady again. I remember because I looked up at that exact moment, annoyed at myself for even noticing. I'd been trying not to notice things lately, trying to keep my world reduced to what I could touch and name. Mug, spoon, tile, leftover soup, notification badge. That's when the motion across the courtyard pulled my eyes to the building opposite mine. 3rd floor. Unit 3C, the windows were black. Not dim, not shaded. Black like somebody had painted over the glass. And behind that darkness, a hand moved. It pressed flat against the inside of the window pane, fingers spread, then lifted and wiggled slowly in a wave. Not frantic, not a plea, almost polite. My brain did that quick, useless thing it does when something doesn't fit. It tried to explain it before it let me feel anything. A reflection, I told myself. Someone in the hallway behind the window. A TV flicker. Maybe they'd left the lights off and were standing in the glow from the street. But the hand was too cleanly outlined, and it was on the inside of the glass. I could see the faint smear where the palm slid, the way condensation or grime caught around the fingertips. Microwave beeped, loud in the small kitchen. I flinched anyway, and the spoon clinked against the mug. A dumb sound that made the whole moment feel even more embarrassing, like I'd been caught staring. I looked back. The hand lowered out of view. The window stayed black. I stood there for another few seconds, staring at my own reflection in the glass of my patio door. The overhead light in my kitchen put my face over the night scene outside, an overlay of tired eyes and the courtyard's bare winter trees. Then I turned away, poured soup into a bowl, and told myself to stop inventing stories. My name is Claire Sutton. I'm 32, and until 3 months ago, I was the kind of person who fell asleep to podcasts about shipwrecks and woke up thinking about paint colors. Now, I live in a 1-bedroom in a renovated brick complex outside Portland, Oregon, close enough to hear the freeway when the wind shifts. I work remote for a small insurance tech company, mostly spreadsheets and emails, and the occasional call where someone says, circling back, like it's a prayer. And I have a private flaw that sounds stupid when I say it out loud. I can't stop looking. Not in the voyeur way. Not because I'm trying to catch people doing something. It's more like my attention is a magnet for the wrong details. The scratch on the elevator button. The guy at the bus stop who keeps checking his watch. The way a neighbor's porch light stays on through daylight like a stubborn thought. I notice, and then I obsess, because noticing feels like control. That habit got worse after the incident on I-5. A deer, a swerve, a truck too close. No one died. The official story ends there. But the part my brain replays at 2:13 a.m. is the moment right before impact, when I saw it coming and still couldn't stop it. That's the private fear underneath everything now. that I'll see the bad thing arriving and freeze again. So when I saw a hand waving behind a dark window, my mind immediately tried to turn it into a problem I could solve with logic and distance. The next day, I forgot about it on purpose. I had meetings, I had laundry, I had the pleasant dullness of routine. I even went for a walk along the sidewalk that curves behind our complex, where the air smells like wet cedar and someone's fireplace and the distant metallic tang of the river. By evening, I had almost convinced myself it hadn't happened. And then, at 9:47 p.m., it happened again. I was on my tiny balcony with a glass of water and my laptop balanced on a chair, pretending I wasn't about to answer more emails. The courtyard was quieter than usual. Someone's dog barked once and got shushed. A car door thumped. The far-off freeway hummed like a tired appliance. Across the way, 3C was black again, and the hand appeared, same spot. Center right pane, palm flat, then the slow wiggle of fingers, like it was greeting me, like it had been waiting for me to look up. This time, I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink for a second. I hated that about myself too, the part that gets calm when it should get unsettled. I lifted my own hand without thinking, a reflex like when you wave back at a stranger who waved first. I waved. The hand across the courtyard waved back in the same slow, deliberate rhythm. Then it withdrew. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a text. "Jonah, you outside? Jonah Patel lives next door to me. We share a thin wall that carries sound in weird ways, his bassy music sometimes, my kettle's whistle, the occasional laugh through drywall that makes you picture the other person's life for half a second. He's 34, male, with kind eyes, and a tendency to narrate his own frustration like he's on a cooking show. He moved in last spring, and we became friendly in that specific way apartment neighbors become friendly. Exchanging packages, loaning a screwdriver, making small jokes about the mailroom smelling like someone's gym socks. We also became friendly because he was the first person to knock on my door after the accident when I came home with bruises on my collarbone and a bandage on my forehead, and a look that said I didn't want help, but might crumble if no one offered it. I texted back, "Me, yeah, why?" His door opened a minute later, and he leaned into the hallway in sweatpants and a hoodie like he'd been debating whether to bother me. "You see it too?" he asked quietly. I set my laptop aside and stepped out, pulling my cardigan tighter. The hallway carpet smelled faintly of cleaning solution and old air. Someone had burned popcorn again earlier. There was still a ghost of it. "What?" I said, even though I knew. He nodded toward the courtyard windows you could see from the end of the hall. The waving, third floor, opposite building. I stared at him. A weird relief loosened something in my chest. It wasn't just me. I wasn't inventing it. "You've seen it?" I asked. "3 nights now," Jonah said. "I thought it was like a joke, some kid. But it's always dark in there, like pitch, and it's always the same. Wave, wave, gone." We walked down the hall toward the stairwell door, because the end of the hallway had a better angle on the courtyard. Our footsteps sounded too loud. My building's heating kicked on with a low groan, then settled. From the stairwell window, the opposite building was framed neatly, like a picture hung on glass. There were warm rectangles of light in other units, TVs glowing, a string of fairy lights in someone's living room, blue and slightly too bright. Unit 3C was a void. The hand didn't appear immediately. We stood there in silence, Not the dramatic kind, just the kind where two people wait for something they don't want to admit they're waiting for. Jonah exhaled. Okay, maybe it's not even. The hand appeared. Right on cue. Jonah's breath caught. Mine did too, but I forced myself to keep breathing through my nose. The hand flattened to the glass. The fingers wiggled in that slow, measured way, like a metronome. It didn't feel friendly now that I wasn't alone. It felt intentional. Jonah lifted his hand and waved back, quick and awkward. The hand in 3C paused, then waved again, slower, matching. Then it dropped away. Jonah let his hand fall. He looked at me like he wanted me to tell him what it meant, like I had a manual for this kind of thing. You know who lives there? He asked. I don't, I said. And it was true, which was embarrassing. I knew the woman 2 doors down had a cat named Pickles because she told everyone, but I didn't know who lived directly across from us in a unit that faced my balcony. Jonah frowned. Should we call someone? Like the office? Security? We don't have security, I said, and the words sounded flimsy. We had a leasing office that closed at 6 and a number that went to voicemail after hours. We had a maintenance guy named Rick who always smelled like cigarettes and lemon cleaner. We had the Portland Police non-emergency line, which I'd used once when someone tried to break into my car in a different complex years ago, and ended up on hold long enough to make tea. Jonah leaned his shoulder against the stairwell wall. What if it's someone who needs help? The thought snapped into my head with the clarity of a picture. Someone trapped in a dark apartment, waving because that's all they can do. Someone with their phone dead. Someone hurt. And right behind that came the other picture. The hand isn't asking for help. The hand is counting on you to look. I hated that my mind did this, built entire stories from a single image. But the hand had been real. Jonah had seen it. That meant the rest of my thoughts weren't automatically paranoia. They were possibilities. We can't just, Jonah started, then trailed off, glancing at the dark window again. It's weird, right? Like, it's not normal. No, I said, voice softer than I intended. It's not. A door opened somewhere below us, someone coming into the stairwell, and we both stepped aside automatically, our bodies obeying the normal rules even as our brains hovered on the edge of something not normal. A woman climbed up, headphones in, carrying a canvas tote. She gave us a polite nod and kept going, not even glancing out the window. When she was gone, Jonah said, I'm gonna knock on 3C tomorrow. Just see. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're messing with people. You can't just knock on someone's door because they waved, I said. It came out sharper than I meant. My heart was still doing that fast little flutter in my ribs. He held up a hand. I'm not gonna be weird about it. Bring it up like, hey, your light's okay. Or hey, I think your window S reflecting weird at night. Something. I pictured Jonah standing outside a stranger's door with his friendly, slightly anxious smile, and I didn't like it. Not because I thought he'd do something wrong, because I suddenly couldn't stand the idea of not knowing what was on the other side, because the wave had already lodged itself in the part of my brain that doesn't let go. I'll go with you, I heard myself say. Jonah looked surprised. You don't have to, I know, I said, but if it's someone who needs help, 2 people is better. And if it's nothing, it's less weird. He nodded slowly, like he was relieved I'd offered, like he hadn't wanted to admit he was nervous. Okay, he said. Tomorrow after work. I should have said no. I should have told him to call the leasing office. I should have done any of the safe, normal, distant things. Instead, I stared out at the courtyard again. The other windows glowed warmly. Someone laughed somewhere, muffled through glass. A TV flashed blue, then white. Ordinary life, layered over the dark square of 3C like it was trying to cover it up. Tomorrow, I agreed. We stood there for another moment, neither of us moving, like leaving the window would make the hand appear again when we weren't watching. Then Jonah pushed off the wall. "I'll text you. Night, Claire." "Night," I said. I walked back down the hall to my door and let myself in, locking it with the deadbolt out of habit. My apartment smelled faintly like soup and detergent. The refrigerator hummed. My laptop waited on the balcony chair like an accusation. I closed the curtains, something I hadn't done in weeks, because I liked the sense of space the courtyard gave me. And as the fabric slid across the glass, I felt a prick of irritation at myself. Not fear. Not yet. More like the irritation of a person who can feel a splinter under their skin and knows they're going to keep prodding it until it bleeds. I turned off the lights, and the room fell into the soft gray of streetlight. In the darkness, my phone screen lit up with Jonah's last message, now a minute old. And for an instant, I imagined a hand on the other side of my own glass, palm pressed, waiting for me to look. I set the phone face down. I lay in bed with my eyes open, and I made myself a promise I didn't trust. Tomorrow, we'd knock. We'd get an answer. And this would go back into the category of things that happen in apartment complexes, and then fade into a story you tell at parties. But the problem with promises like that is they only work if the world cooperates. And the world, lately, hadn't been cooperative. By the time I got off work the next evening, the sky was already dimming into that bruised Oregon blue that makes everything look like it's underwater. Jonah texted at 5:42 p.m. Jonah. Still on for 3C. Jonah, before it gets too late. I stared at the message longer than necessary. My laptop was still open, inbox half cleared. The accident had left me with this new habit of over-preparing for everything, charging my phone to 100%, checking weather twice, mapping exits in buildings I'd never need to evacuate. If we were going to knock on a stranger's door, I wanted it done in daylight. I wanted witnesses, normalcy, options. Me, yeah. 6. He responded with a thumbs up almost immediately. I changed out of my soft house clothes into jeans and a sweater, tied my hair back. I told myself I was just being presentable, not bracing. When I stepped into the hallway, Jonah was already there, keys in one hand, phone in the other like he'd been debating calling someone. "You ready?" he asked. "Define ready," I said. He gave a thin smile. "Fair." We took the stairs instead of the elevator. It felt more intentional, more controlled. The stairwell smelled like damp concrete and lemon cleaner, and somewhere below us, someone was cooking onions. Normal smells, normal building sounds. We crossed the courtyard without speaking much. Up close, the opposite building looked older than ours. Same brick, but more worn, the mortar cracked in places. I'd never really walked this side at night. The concrete path had a hairline fracture running down the middle like a seam. The directory inside the lobby listed tenants by last name and unit number. 3C Reed. M. Halpern, no first name. "You know that name?" Jonah asked. I shook my head. The lobby lights buzzed faintly overhead. There was a folding table in the corner with a stack of Amazon packages and a corkboard with old notices curling at the edges. Nothing about a missing person. Nothing about maintenance, just routine. We climbed to the 3rd floor. The hallway up here felt tighter than ours. Carpet, a darker brown, air warmer. I could hear a TV murmuring behind one door, a laugh track bleeding through. Someone coughed 2 units down. 3C was at the end. The door looked unremarkable. Standard beige. Brass numbers slightly crooked. No welcome mat. Jonah hesitated, then knocked. The sound echoed more than it should have. We waited. No footsteps. No shuffle. No shadow under the door. Jonah knocked again, louder. "Mr. Halpern," he called, polite but projecting. "Hey, sorry to bother you. We're from across the courtyard." Nothing. I leaned slightly toward the door. There was no light bleeding out from the edges. Not even the thin line you get when someone's home, but keeping things dim. "Try the handle," Jonah muttered. "Don't," I said immediately. He glanced at me. "I'm just checking if it's locked." "That's still weird," I said. "We're not police." He exhaled through his nose, then knocked again, this time with his knuckles flat. "Mr. Halpern, we just wanted to check something about your window. It's reflecting weird at night." It sounded ridiculous out loud. A door down the hall cracked open. An older woman with gray hair pulled into a bun peeked out. "You looking for Marty?" she asked. We both turned. She opened her door a little wider, but stayed inside the frame. She was in her late 60s, maybe early 70s, female, wearing a navy cardigan and holding what looked like a crossword book. "Yes, ma'am," Jonah said. "Is he?" She frowned. "Haven't seen him in a bit. He keeps to himself." "Why?" I stepped forward slightly. "We've been noticing some movement in his window at night. Just wanted to make sure everything's okay." Her eyebrows knit together. "Movement," she said. "His lights are always off. Man hates overhead lighting. Says it hurts his eyes." "Have you seen him recently?" I asked. She paused, thinking. "Last week, maybe. I heard something fall over in there 2 nights ago. Like a chair. But I figured, you know." She made a vague gesture. "He's clumsy. A chair. 2 nights ago would line up with when Jonah first saw the wave." Jonah shifted his weight. "Does he have family?" She shook her head. "Not that I know of. Divorced, I think. Keeps his door closed, quiet." The hallway seemed warmer suddenly. "Have you smelled anything weird?" I asked before I could stop myself. Jonah shot me a look. The woman blinked. "No," she said slowly. "Should I have?" "No," I said quickly. "Sorry, that was just covering bases." She studied us for another moment, then said, "If you're worried, call the office. They've got keys." "It's after hours," Jonah said. She nodded. "Then you call the police for a welfare check." "That's what they're for." Her door closed gently. Jonah looked at me. "Well," he said, "there's our answer." "Is it?" I asked. He frowned. "Claire, I'm not saying we shouldn't call," I said. What if it's nothing? What if he's home and just weird? Police show up, break down his door because we got spooked by a wave." "You saw it," Jonah said. His voice tightened. "I saw it. And now we've got a possible fall 2 nights ago and no response to knocking." I stared at the door again. Beige, still, silent. My mind was building scenarios again. But this time they weren't abstract. They were procedural. If someone had fallen and couldn't get up, they might try to get attention. But why wave? Why not pound? Why not shout? Unless they couldn't. Unless they were conserving energy. Unless call non-emergency, I said finally. Jonah didn't argue. We stepped back toward the stairwell, and he dialed. I listened to the ring, then the recorded voice listing options. He navigated through them with increasing impatience. When a dispatcher finally picked up, Jonah explained, calm but clipped. "Yeah, hi. We're at the Riverbend Apartments on Yes. We're concerned about a neighbor in 3C haven't responded to knocks. Possible fall. We've seen unusual movement in the window at night. He listened, nodded. Yes, we're willing to wait. He hung up. They'll send someone, he said. Said it might be a while. They're busy. Of course they were. We went back downstairs to the lobby to wait. It felt wrong to hover outside the door like vultures. The courtyard lights flicked on fully now that dusk had settled. Through the glass lobby doors, I could see our building across the way. My balcony, my closed curtains. Jonah leaned against the wall. You okay? He asked. I nodded, then shook my head. This is exactly the kind of thing I freeze on, I said before I could edit myself. What? I see something. I think about it. I analyze it. But when it comes to actually doing something, I made a vague gesture with my hands. Hesitate. You're here, he said. You didn't freeze. Not yet, I muttered. Time stretched. 10 minutes. 15. A patrol car finally rolled into the lot, lights off. 2 officers stepped out, one male, late 30s, solid build, one female, maybe mid-20s, hair pulled tight under her cap. They moved with that practiced casualness that isn't actually casual. We explained everything again. The older officer, Officer Ramirez, according to his badge, asked, You saw a hand? Multiple nights. Yes, Jonah said. Through a dark window, the younger officer asked. Yes, I said. She glanced at Ramirez just briefly. They went upstairs first without us. We waited in the lobby, my pulse ticking higher with each passing second. 5 minutes later, Ramirez came back down. We're not getting a response, he said. Neighbor confirms he lives alone. We're going to request a key from management. It's after hours, Jonah said. We've got an emergency contact, Ramirez replied. Another wait, phone calls, paperwork. The building felt too quiet now. The TV upstairs had gone silent. Even the onion smell was gone. Finally, a man in a wrinkled polo, Rick from maintenance, arrived, slightly out of breath, jangling a ring of keys. What's going on? He asked. Welfare check, Ramirez said. 3C, Rick's expression shifted from annoyance to something else. He's paid up, Rick said defensively, like that mattered. Just need the key, Ramirez said. We followed them upstairs this time at a distance. Rick fumbled through keys until one clicked in the lock. The door opened inward, dark, not dim, not shadowy, dark like the power was out or the bulbs were gone. Mr. Halpern, Ramirez called. No answer. The officers stepped inside, flashlights cutting narrow beams through the room. From where I stood in the hallway, I could see only fragments. A couch, a coffee table tipped on its side, papers scattered, one dining chair on its back. Jonah's hand brushed mine briefly, then withdrew. The younger officer moved toward the window. Sir, she called. Her flashlight passed over the glass. I strained to see. There were smudges on the inside of the pane, hand-shaped, multiple, some higher, some lower, like someone had tried to reach up more than once. My stomach tightened. Bedroom's clear, Ramirez called from deeper inside. Clear, not there. They swept the rest of the apartment quickly. Empty, no body, no person, no obvious sign of forced entry, just the tipped chair, the scattered papers, and the window. Ramirez stepped back into the hallway. Apartment's unoccupied, he said. We'll file a report. Could be he left in a hurry. Could be something else. We'll try contacting him. Jonah blinked. But we don't see any immediate danger, Ramirez said evenly. No blood. No signs of struggle beyond what looks like a fall or accident. We'll follow up. The officers left. Rick locked the door again, muttering something about paperwork. The hallway returned to normal too quickly. Jonah turned to me. "He's not there." "No," I said, "but the hand, I know." We stood there a moment longer, staring at the closed door of 3C like it might explain itself. "Maybe it was someone else in there," Jonah said finally. "A guest." "In the dark," I said, "every night." He didn't answer. We went back to our building in silence. By the time we reached the courtyard, it was fully night. And that's when we both stopped. 3C's window, dark, third floor, center right pane had a shape in it, not a hand, a shadow. It stood just behind the glass still. Jonah's breath hitched. "They locked it," he whispered. "We saw them lock it." I stared up at the window. The shadow lifted an arm and began to wave, slow, deliberate, exactly the same as before. My phone buzzed in my hand, making me jump. A notification from an unknown number. I looked down. A text message. "Unknown. Stop looking at my window." I felt the ground tilt, not physically, but in that internal way where your sense of safety slides a few inches out of place. Jonah stared at my face. "What?" he asked. I turned the screen toward him. The shadow in 3C kept waving, and my phone buzzed again. "Unknown, or I'll come over there." The shadow in 3C kept waving long after my phone stopped buzzing. Jonah grabbed my elbow, not hard, but firm enough to ground me. "Let's go inside," he said. We backed toward our building without taking our eyes off the window. The courtyard was maybe 50 feet across, a rectangle of concrete and patchy grass boxed in by brick. 3 stories up, the dark square of 3C felt closer than it had any right to. The shadow's arm moved slowly, methodically, like it had all the time in the world. We got inside our lobby, and the glass doors shut with a soft hydraulic sigh. The courtyard noise dulled. My heart didn't. Jonah looked at my phone again. "Unknown number? Yeah, answer it." "No," I said immediately. He frowned. "If they're watching, they already know you saw it." I hated that he was right. My thumb hovered. Then I tapped the number and hit call. It rang once, twice, then a click. No greeting, just air. I held the phone to my ear and heard breathing. Slow, even, close to the mic. Not exaggerated, not theatrical, just someone existing. "Who is this?" I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. The breathing continued. Jonah leaned closer, listening. "You're in 3C?" I asked. A faint scrape like fabric brushing something, then a whisper, barely audible. "Stop." The line went dead. Jonah swore under his breath. "Okay," he said, "okay, that's not nothing." My hands were shaking now, fine tremors in my fingers. I flexed them once, twice. "We call the police again," he said. "They were just here," I said. "They'll think we're escalating." They already escalated. He wasn't wrong. But I had this other thought clawing at me. If someone was in 3C and the door had just been locked by police and maintenance, how were they getting in? Either the lock wasn't secure or there was another way. Fire escape. I looked up toward the side of the building. On the far end, partially hidden by a leafless maple, there was a metal fire escape zigzagging down from the 3rd floor. It faced the alley, not the courtyard. "Come on," I said, already moving. "Where?" Jonah asked, jogging to catch up. "Other side of the building." We cut around the right side of our complex, past the dumpsters, and the faint smell of stale beer and cardboard. The alley between buildings was narrow, maybe 12 feet across, asphalt cracked and patched. The fire escape loomed above us. 3 stories up, a metal platform outside 3C's window. The window was dark from this angle too, but I could see the outline of the frame. Jonah looked up. You don't seriously think if they didn't use the door, they used this? The ladder at the bottom of the fire escape was retracted, pulled up, and hooked in place about 8 feet off the ground. Standard safety measure. Jonah exhaled. So they'd have to lower it. Or jump, I said. From 3 stories. He shook his head. No. We stood there in the cold alley light, breath fogging faintly. My phone buzzed again. Unknown, I can see you. I turned slowly. The alley was empty. A single security light above the back door of 3C flickered slightly, moths orbiting it. Jonah swore again. Okay, this is harassment at minimum. He pulled out his own phone. I'm calling 911 this time. He started explaining before I could stop him. Yeah, we just had officers here for a welfare check at Riverbend Apartments. Now we're receiving direct threats from someone possibly inside that same unit. He paced as he talked, voice clipped. I watched the fire escape. Something moved above. A sharp metallic rattle. My chest tightened. The ladder jerked once, then dropped halfway with a loud clang. Jonah froze mid-sentence. Yeah, they just lowered the fire escape ladder. He gave our location to the dispatcher. The ladder hung now, swaying slightly. Neither of us moved toward it. A figure leaned over the top railing of the fire escape. From this angle, it wasn't just a shadow. It was a person, adult-sized, hood up. They didn't wave, they just watched us. Police are on their way, Jonah said quietly. The figure's head tilted slightly, like they were listening. Then they stepped back out of sight. The ladder remained down. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Jonah looked at me. We don't go up there, I nodded. My legs felt weak anyway. 2 patrol cars pulled into the alley within minutes. Different officers this time. Younger. Faster movements. They took our statements again. I showed them the texts. They asked for screenshots. They asked if I'd shared my number publicly. No, I said, not anywhere obvious. One officer shone his flashlight up the fire escape. Anyone up there, he called. No response. They climbed. Metal boots on metal steps echoing. We waited below, necks craned. A few minutes later, one officer leaned over the railing. Window S locked from the inside, he called down. No one visible. What? Jonah said. That's not possible, I muttered. They checked the roof access. Clear, they came back down. Could have been someone from another unit messing with you, one officer said. Fire escape connects to the roof. But we saw them at 3C, I said. He gave me a look that was neutral but skeptical. Get a restraining order if you can identify the sender, he said. For now, stay inside. Keep doors locked. They left. Attempt 1, call police. Result, no suspect, no entry, no proof. The ladder was retracted again before they left. Jonah and I stood in the alley alone. Okay, he said slowly. Either we're missing something obvious, or someone's playing a long game. Or both, I said. We went back inside, but neither of us went to our apartments. Instead, we sat in Jonah's living room with the lights off, curtains barely parted so we could see 3C across the courtyard. It was nearly 10:30 now. My nerves were buzzing so hard I felt nauseous. Let's think, Jonah said. They have your number. How? I don't know, I said. Package label, mailroom. He snapped his fingers. The Amazon table in their lobby. I stared at him. If he ordered something recently, your name and number could be on a package if you ever shipped anything here, he said. I haven't. Okay, but what about delivery apps, ride shares? My brain raced backward. I'd had groceries delivered once last week. I'd met the driver at the door. My number would have been masked. Probably. A shadow moved in 3C's window. We both stiffened. The hand appeared again. Palm flat. Wave, slow, deliberate. My phone buzzed. Unknown, wave back. I didn't. Jonah's jaw tightened. Block the number. I did. The hand kept waving, then it stopped. The light in 3C flickered on suddenly. We both jumped. For a split second, the entire room was visible through the window. Couch against the far wall. Coffee table upright now. No scattered papers. No tipped chair. Clean. Then the light snapped off again. Jonah stood up so fast he knocked his knee into the coffee table. They were in there, he said. They cleaned up. My pulse pounded in my ears. They're staging it, I said. So when police come back, there's nothing. Attempt to observe, document, catch them in the act. Jonah grabbed his phone and started recording through the gap in the curtains. Keep it steady, I whispered. We watched. Nothing moved for a full minute, then a loud bang. From inside Jonah's apartment, we both spun. The sound had come from the kitchen. Jonah grabbed a heavy ceramic mug like it was a weapon and moved slowly toward the doorway. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might faint. He flicked on the kitchen light. The cabinet above the fridge hung open, one hinge loose. A stack of plastic containers had fallen out, scattering across the tile. We stared at it. That's been loose for weeks, Jonah said after a beat. I forgot to fix it. I let out a shaky breath that almost turned into a laugh. Misdirection. Just gravity and neglect. We went back to the living room. 3C was dark. No hand, no light. My phone buzzed again. Even though I'd blocked the number. Different number this time. Unknown too. You should have waved. Jonah saw my face change. What? I showed him. He swore again, softer this time. This is targeted, he said. Not random. My exhaustion hit all at once then, like someone had cut a string holding me upright. It was past midnight now. My head throbbed. I can't keep doing this, I said quietly. Jonah nodded. Then we ended. How? He looked at the window across the courtyard. We go over there now while they're inside. My stomach dropped. That's insane. Police aren't seeing anything. They're not going to sit here all night. Whoever it is thinks we won't push. He stepped toward the door. Jonah, if they're in there, we catch them. If they're not, we prove it. I thought about freezing on I-5, about watching something come at me and doing nothing. This was different. This was a choice. Fine, I said. We left his apartment, crossed the courtyard again. The air felt colder now. The window of 3C was black. The lobby door of their building was unlocked. We didn't speak as we climbed to the 3rd floor. 3C's door stood in front of us again. Jonah knocked once. Hard silence. He tried the handle, locked. From inside, a faint sound. Footsteps. My breath caught. A shadow moved under the door. Jonah stepped back. Police are on their way, he lied loudly. The footsteps stopped. A click. The deadbolt turned. The door opened 3 inches. Darkness inside. A voice from within. You shouldn't have come. And before either of us could step back, the hallway lights went out. Total darkness. Behind us, the stairwell door slammed shut. And we heard the unmistakable scrape of metal sliding into place from the inside of 3C, a chain lock. We were in the hallway. The only light now coming from the faint green glow of the exit sign at the far end. And 3C's door was slowly opening wider. Point of no return. 3C's door opened another inch. The chain caught with a small metallic clink, and the gap became a black slice of space that smelled faintly like old coffee and something sharper, ozone, maybe, like overheated electronics. Jonah shifted beside me. I couldn't see his face in the dark, but I heard the wet sound of him swallowing. "Air," he whispered, close to my ear. "Phone light." My hands were clumsy. I fumbled, got the flashlight on. A hard white beam snapped into existence and carved the hallway into pieces. Brown carpet, beige walls, the green exit sign glowing at the far end like a toxic little moon. The light hit the door. A sliver of someone's face appeared behind the chain. Not ghostly, not pale in any dramatic way. Just a man's face, half hidden by a hood, skin oily with sweat. Late 20s or 30s. Stubble. Eyes that didn't blink. He leaned closer and the chain rattled. "Turn that off," he said, calm voice, not loud, not panicked, like he was annoyed we'd brought a flashlight to his game. Jonah lifted his own phone, light on too. "Who are you?" The man smiled, and it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that means the person thinks they've already won something. "You're the one who called," he said, looking past Jonah to me. Twice. My stomach dropped. He knew which voice was mine. "Where's Halpern?" Jonah demanded. The man's eyes flicked to Jonah like he was a fly. "Not here," he said. "He doesn't wave." The chain shook again as he pushed the door a fraction wider, testing the limit. He couldn't open it fully without undoing it. He didn't. He wanted us closer. I took a half step back without meaning to. My shoulder brushed the wall, and the wallpaper's subtle texture rasped my sweater. Jonah stayed planted. "Listen," Jonah said, too steady, like he was trying to keep his fear from leaking into his voice. "We're leaving. Don't contact us again. Don't come near our apartment." The man's gaze slid back to me. He whispered, almost conversational, "You shouldn't look through curtains if you don't want to be seen." A thin click sounded from inside 3C, low and mechanical, like a latch being disengaged. My body went cold in a practical way. Not cinematic, not poetic, just the sudden certainty that something physical was about to happen. "Jonah," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. He finally edged back just a little. The man's hand appeared on the inside of the gap, gloved, black nitrile. Fingers curled around the edge of the door, testing. I saw the other hand in his shadow, also gloved, holding something long and dark. Not a gun, too thin, a screwdriver, or a utility knife. "Stairwell," Jonah whispered. We pivoted together toward the stairwell door behind us. It wouldn't budge. Jonah slammed his shoulder into it once. The door thudded, but stayed shut, like it had been deadbolted from the other side, which didn't make sense because stairwell doors don't have deadbolts, unless someone had wedged it. "Okay," Jonah breathed. "Okay." His voice cracked on the second okay. The man inside 3C chuckled, quiet. "You found my lock," he said. There was another sound behind us, the elevator at the other end of the hall chiming softly, then the doors sliding open with a whisper. Light spilled out, weak, fluorescent, but it was enough to show the shape of the hallway's far end. A strip of illumination cut across the carpet. My brain scrambled for options and came up with useless ones. Run, scream, call someone. I tried to dial 911 with trembling fingers. My screen flashed. No service. Of course. Concrete and brick, and that stupid dead zone that always ate calls inside certain stairwells. Jonah grabbed my wrist. "Fire alarm," he hissed. "There's one by the elevator." We started toward it fast. Behind us, the chain on 3C rattled. Metal scraped. The door shuddered. He was taking it off. He had made us come here so we'd be trapped between his door and the blocked stairwell. We moved faster, shoes scuffing the carpet. The elevator light made everything look sickly. Halfway there, The hallway lights snapped back on all at once. Not a gentle fade, an electrical pop, and then full brightness. I flinched hard. My eyes watered. The sudden brightness did one thing I didn't expect. It made 3C's interior visible through the open gap. Not the whole apartment, just a slice. And in that slice, beyond the door, I saw a folding chair set up facing the peephole, like someone had been sitting there waiting. A cheap phone tripod on the floor, a tangle of wires leading toward the living room. Jonah saw it too. "What the?" A hand grabbed Jonah's hoodie from behind. He shouted, stumbled. The man from 3C had come out fast, silently, chain gone. He moved like someone who'd practiced in his head 100 times. Hood up, gloves on, shoulders tight with purpose. He yanked Jonah backward, hard. Jonah swung blindly, elbow catching the man's jaw with a dull thud. The man grunted, not in pain exactly, more like irritation, and shoved Jonah into the wall. Jonah hit with his shoulder and made a sound I didn't like. I froze. There it was, my old reflex. The moment right before impact, the part where my body turned into a spectator. The man's eyes flicked to me. He lifted the thin, dark object in his hand, a box cutter. The blade glinted under the fluorescent lights. "Phone," he said to me. "Give me your phone." Jonah pushed off the wall, coughing. "Claire, go." The man slashed toward Jonah. Not a wild swing, a small controlled motion. The blade caught Jonah's forearm. A bright line of blood opened instantly. Jonah gasped and staggered back. Something in me snapped, not heroism, not bravery, anger. The stupid, pure anger of watching someone hurt a person who'd been kind to me. My eyes darted. On the wall near the elevator, a red metal cabinet. Fire extinguisher. I ran for it, hands shaking so badly I almost missed the latch. The cabinet popped open. I grabbed the extinguisher by the handle, heavier than I expected, and yanked it free. The man turned toward me, box cutter still up. "Don't," he said, like he was warning me. I didn't aim. I just squeezed the lever. White powder blasted out in a violent cloud, loud and hissing, filling the hallway with choking dust. It hit the man full in the face and chest. He swore and stumbled, one gloved hand going to his eyes. Jonah used the moment. He lunged forward and slammed his shoulder into the man's torso, driving him back toward 3C. They hit the doorframe. The box cutter clattered to the floor. I kept spraying until the extinguisher sputtered. The hallway looked like a snowstorm. Powder coated the carpet, the walls, our clothes. The air tasted like bitter chalk. "Fire alarm," Jonah rasped. One hand clamped over his bleeding arm. I dropped the extinguisher, sprinted the last few steps to the pull station by the elevator. My fingers hooked it. I yanked. A siren began screaming immediately, sharp and relentless. A strobe light started flashing, painting the hallway in red-white pulses. The man coughed violently, eyes red and watering. He tried to back into 3C. Jonah grabbed the doorframe with his good hand and shoved hard, forcing the door wider. "Claire," he wheezed. "Lock him in." I understood what he meant the second he said it. If we could shut him inside 3C and hold the door until the building filled with alarms and neighbors, and eventually police, then we didn't have to fight. We just had to endure. I ran to the door. The man's hand shot out, palm flat against the door edge, exactly like the wave. Only now it wasn't a wave. It was leverage. He shoved back, trying to push past us. I threw my weight into the door. Jonah did too. The door moved an inch, two, sound was more animal than human, not because it was supernatural, but because desperation makes people ugly. He rammed his shoulder against the inside. The door slammed into Jonah's forearm, right where the cut was. Jonah cried out, stumbled. Blood splattered onto the powder in a bright red spray that looked wrong against the white. My throat tightened. The man surged forward, and for a terrifying second, I thought he'd get out. Then I saw it. The chain latch on the door. Little metal slider on the frame. It was still there. He'd removed the chain from inside to open the door, but the frame side was right in front of me. I jammed my fingers onto the slider, hands slick with sweat and powder, and shoved it forward. It clicked into place. The chain dangled loose, but the latch itself was locked over the door edge, now crude, imperfect, but enough to stop it from opening more than a few inches. The man slammed into the door again. It held. He shoved harder, and the latch creaked, metal bending slightly. "Help," I gasped to Jonah, to anyone, to the empty hallway. Jonah, face pale under the powder, pressed his shoulder against the door. His injured arm hung useless at his side, blood dripping steadily. "It's gonna break," he said through clenched teeth. The alarm kept shrieking. Somewhere downstairs, a door opened. Voices rose in confusion. A woman shouted, "What's happening?" Footsteps pounded on stairs. The man inside 3C spoke through the narrow opening, voice suddenly low and intimate, like he was at a party leaning in close. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "You could have just waved." He rammed the door again. The latch groaned. I glanced down and saw the box cutter on the carpet, half buried in powder, blade still out. I snatched it up without thinking and slid it away from the door, toward the wall, out of his reach if he forced the gap wider. Aber appeared at the other end of the hall, male, maybe 40s, in sweatpants, eyes wide. Behind him, another door opened, a woman holding a phone up filming. "What the hell?" the man said. "Call 911, Jonah snapped, voice ragged. "Now, they already are," the woman shouted, looking at her screen. The man in 3C laughed again, and it was awful because it sounded normal, like a guy laughing at a joke. "You think they'll believe you?" he called through the gap. "They didn't before." He slammed again. The latch finally bent enough to slip. The door jolted wider. His gloved hand shot out, clawing. I screamed, not a horror movie scream, a raw, involuntary sound, and shoved the door with everything I had, slamming it back. Jonah threw his body into it, despite the pain, and the door shut harder than it should have, rattling in the frame. The latch caught again, barely. "Back up," I heard myself say to the neighbors. "Get back." They did, startled. I looked down at my hands. Powder. Blood smears from Jonah's arm. My fingers trembled so hard I couldn't feel my nails. "Claire," Jonah whispered, and when I looked at him, his eyes were glassy. He was losing blood, not spurting, but steady. Real. My stomach turned. "Sit," I said. "Sit down." "I can't." "You can," I snapped, sharper than I'd ever spoken to him. "Sit." He slid down the wall beside the door, legs out, bracing his shoulder against it still, teeth clenched. I tore off my sweater with shaky hands, leaving me in a thin, long-sleeve shirt, and pressed the sweater hard against Jonah's forearm. "Hold pressure," I said. "Don't let go." He nodded, jaw tight. Inside 3C, the man went quiet for a moment. Then, softly, "You're bleeding," like an observation, like he was curious. A new sound rose under the alarm. Sirens. Real ones, approaching fast. The man inside 3C started to move, quick now, not slamming the door anymore. He was doing something else. I heard drawers open, a frantic rustle, footsteps crossing hardwood. Jonah's eyes widened. "He's grabbing something," Jonah rasped. "Stay," I said, but my voice sounded useless. A neighbor, an older woman I didn't recognize, ran up and handed me a roll of paper towels like she'd grabbed the first thing she could. Another neighbor knelt near Jonah, hands hovering, unsure where to touch. The sirens grew louder. Then the fire escape outside 3C clanged. Metal rattled. A sharp bang. He was trying to get out another way. I ran to the window at the end of the hall, the one that faced the alley and the fire escape. The glass was dusty, but I could see the dark zigzag of metal. A figure was halfway onto the fire escape platform, hood up, moving fast. He had a backpack slung over one shoulder now. He wasn't trapped. Not really. Not unless someone stopped him. My body wanted to freeze again. Let the sirens handle it. Let the system do its job. But I saw, clear as day, the ladder. I saw the alley below. I saw how he'd lowered it last night. And I saw something else. The ladder wasn't down. He would have to jump from the third-floor platform to the second-floor stairs, or climb down the side supports, or lower the ladder and climb quickly before police arrived. He glanced down, calculating. Then he did what I should have expected. He pulled out a phone, held it up. A quick flash. He was filming us, documenting, gathering leverage, or just feeding whatever was wrong in him. The sirens hit the building now, tires on gravel, doors slamming. I ran back to 3C's door. The man inside was gone from the doorway. The chain latch still held the door shut enough. "Police," someone shouted from downstairs. "Police are here." A pounding started on the stairwell door behind us. The wedge that had held it gave way with a scrape, and the door finally swung open. 2 officers rushed in, faces tense, hands on their belts, eyes flicking to Jonah's blood and the powder-coated hallway. "Where is he?" one demanded. "Fire escape," I pointed. "Back alley." They moved instantly, sprinting past, radio crackling. One officer stayed, crouched by Jonah. "You're hurt, what happened?" Jonah tried to speak and winced. I forced words out, fast, messy. He came out, box cutter. He tried to take my phone. "He's been threatening us. Ambulance is coming," the officer said. "Stay with him." The next few minutes blurred into sound and light. The alarm still shrieking, neighbors murmuring, radio squawking, the thump of boots on stairs, someone yelling, "Stop," from outside. I held pressure on Jonah's arm with my sweater and paper towels layered on top until my fingers cramped. Jonah kept trying to joke through clenched teeth like it would make him less afraid. "Guess I'm not fixing that cabinet," he rasped, and then he grimaced, eyes rolling slightly, and I realized he wasn't joking, he was disoriented. "Stay with me," I said, and my voice broke. "Jonah, stay with me." He blinked at me slow. "I'm here." His skin felt clammy under the powder. The paramedics arrived, 2 of them, efficient and brisk, cutting through the crowd. They wrapped Jonah's arm in gauze, tightened a pressure bandage. One asked him questions: name, date, if he knew where he was. He answered, sluggish but coherent. I sat back against the wall, suddenly aware of every bruise on my own body from slamming into that door. My shoulder ached. My throat burned from extinguisher dust and panic. An officer returned, breathing hard. "We've got him," he said to his partner. He tried to drop to the second landing. Slipped. "He's in custody." My stomach lurched with a complicated relief that didn't feel clean. The image of him slipping on cold metal flashed through me, and I hated that part of me felt satisfaction. "Who is he?" I asked, voice hoarse. The officer looked at me, powder on his uniform now too. "Not Halpern," he said. "Name's different. He's got multiple phones, some ID cards, a bag of mail. We'll sort it out. Mail, packages, my number." A ripple of nausea rolled through me. "Was he living in 3C?" I asked. "Looks like it," the officer said. "Cameras set up inside facing the courtyard. That's how he was watching. We'll get a warrant. We'll contact the property manager. For now, you two need statements." I nodded, but it felt like my head was full of cotton. As they lifted Jonah onto the stretcher, he grabbed my wrist with his good hand. His eyes were sharp for a second. "Don't look up," he whispered. And because he said it like that, I did. I looked through the stairwell window across the courtyard to my own building. My curtains were still drawn, but I could see the faint reflection of the hallway's flashing strobe in the glass. And for a split second, in that reflection, it looked like a hand pressed flat against my own window from the inside. Just a trick of light. Powder in my eyelashes. Exhaustion. I knew that. Still, my stomach knotted. Because for the first time since the waving started, the courtyard didn't feel like a space between buildings. It felt like a line someone could cross. The hallway smelled like chalk and copper for days. Even after the cleaning crew came through with industrial vacuums and lemon disinfectant, there was something faint in the carpet, a dry, dusty tang that caught in the back of my throat. Every time I walked past 3C, they replaced the bent latch, repainted the scuffed section of wall where Jonah had hit. The maintenance crew swapped out the hallway light fixture that had flickered when the power cut, like the building could shed the memory if it changed the bulbs. But you can't vacuum up the part where you hear someone breathing in your ear and know they're looking at you through glass. Jonah was discharged from the hospital at 2 a.m. It wasn't a dramatic injury, the doctor said. A deep laceration to the forearm, clean slice from a sharp blade. 8 stitches. A tetanus shot. He'd been lucky the cut missed anything major. Lucky. He didn't feel lucky. I sat in the plastic chair beside his hospital bed while the nurse wrapped fresh gauze around his arm. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped in steady rhythm. "You good?" I asked quietly. He nodded too quickly. Yeah, he was. His face had gone gray around the edges, the kind of exhaustion that comes after adrenaline burns off and leaves you hollow. He kept flexing his fingers like he expected them not to respond. When they wheeled him out, he insisted on walking the last few steps to the car, stubborn as ever. I drove. He stared out the window at the empty streets of Portland, jaw tight. "You didn't freeze," he said suddenly. "What? Up there," he said. "You didn't freeze." I didn't answer right away. "I almost did," I said finally. "At first, but you didn't." I gripped the steering wheel harder than necessary. We got back to the complex just as dawn was starting to thin the sky. The courtyard looked smaller in daylight, less theatrical. The fire escape was just metal and bolts and rust streaks. Police tape stretched across the entrance to 3C's building. A patrol car idled nearby. An officer nodded at us when we passed. We didn't look up at the window. Not that morning. By noon, the story had become something else. Neighbors talked in clusters near the mailboxes. The older woman with the crossword book stood by the corkboard telling someone. I knew something was off. A man I'd never seen before explained loudly that he'd always said the security here was a joke. It was strange how quickly fear turned into narrative. The leasing office sent out an email. Residents, there was an incident involving unauthorized occupancy in Unit 3C. The individual has been apprehended. There is no ongoing threat. We are reviewing security protocols. Please contact management with any concerns. Unauthorized occupancy. Like someone had overstayed a dinner invitation. Later that afternoon, an officer came to take a more detailed statement. His name was Collins. Early 40s, calm eyes that didn't rush you. He sat at my small kitchen table while I described the waving again. Every night, he asked. Almost, I said. It started small, just a hand. He nodded, jotting notes. He had cameras set up inside 3C, he said, facing the courtyard. One aimed directly at your balcony. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face steady. How long? I asked. We're still reviewing footage, he said. Preliminary guess. At least 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I tried to remember what I'd done on my balcony in the past 2 weeks. Coffee in pajamas. Stretching in the morning. A phone call with my sister where I'd cried a little and thought no one could see. I folded my hands in my lap so he wouldn't see them shake. And Halpern? I asked. Officer Collins leaned back slightly. Marty Halpern moved out 3 months ago, he said. Lease was terminated. We're looking into how this guy got access. Could be a copied key. Could be something internal. Internal. My eyes flicked involuntarily toward the ceiling, like I could see through the building into its pipes and wires and secrets. He had mail in his bag, Collins continued. Yours included. My mail? I asked. Junk mail, mostly. One grocery delivery receipt with a partial number. He could have pieced together the rest. We found prepaid phones, gloves, basic tools. Nothing ritualistic. He said the last word almost apologetically, like he knew that was what people wanted to hear, either something grand and terrifying or something so banal it didn't sting. He was squatting, I asked. Looks like it, Collins said. He's got a record for burglary, stalking. Nothing violent until now. Until now. The phrase landed heavy. Jonah sat on the couch, arm propped up on pillows, listening without speaking. Is he saying anything? Jonah asked finally. Collins hesitated. He's not very cooperative. What does that mean? I said. It means he likes control, Collins said evenly. He's not giving it up easily. When the officer left, the apartment felt too quiet. Jonah stared at the opposite building through the gap in my curtains. They're taking his stuff out, he said. I stood beside him. 2 officers were carrying out black trash bags and a plastic storage bin. A third held a cardboard box filled with electronics, wires spilling out like veins. Second, I imagined those cameras powered on, red recording lights blinking as they documented my life without my consent. My skin prickled. You want to stay at my place tonight? Jonah asked. Your place is across the hall from mine, I said. Yeah, he said, but it's not your balcony. I knew what he meant. That night, I slept on Jonah's couch, or tried to. Every small sound made me sit up. The refrigerator cycling, a car door slamming outside, the elevator chiming on the wrong floor. At one point, around 3 a.m, I walked quietly to his living room window and parted the curtain an inch. The courtyard was empty. 3C's window was boarded up from the inside with a sheet of plywood. No hand, no shadow, just a flat square of wood. It should have felt like closure. It felt like someone had taped over a hole in the wall without fixing what was behind it. In the days that followed, things returned to a version of normal. The fire escape ladder stayed locked in place with a new metal bracket. Management installed brighter courtyard lights, They sent another email about enhanced surveillance measures. I met with a therapist recommended by my primary care doctor. She had a soft voice and a habit of nodding slowly while you talked. You were confronted with a threat and acted, she said in our second session. That rewrites the narrative your body has been holding since the accident. I didn't tell her about the moment in the hallway when I froze for half a second and felt the old paralysis creeping in. I told her about the fire extinguisher instead. The way my hands shook. The way the white powder exploded. Jonah started physical therapy for his arm. The cut healed cleanly, but he complained about stiffness when he tried to grip things too hard. One evening, a week after the arrest, he knocked on my door. "Got something," he said, holding up his phone. Scrolling local news. There was a short article about the arrest. No names yet. Just male suspect apprehended after attempted assault in apartment complex. He was live streaming, Jonah said quietly. My throat went dry. From inside 3C, he continued. Private channel, invitation only. They're still figuring out how many people were watching. How many? I whispered. They won't say. I pictured anonymous usernames typing comments, watching the wave, waiting for something worse. My stomach twisted. That's why he wanted your phone, Jonah said. Control the narrative, control the feed. We stood in my doorway in silence. Eventually, I said, "Do you regret knocking?" He didn't hesitate. "No," he said. "Even with this," I gestured vaguely to his arm. He looked down at the stitches, then back at me. "I regret that he was there," he said. "I don't regret that we stopped him." That night, I closed my curtains before sunset. Not dramatically, not with a trembling hand, just a small, deliberate motion. 3 weeks later, 3C was rented again. The plywood was gone. Fresh blinds hung in the window. A young couple moved in, mid-20s, laughing as they carried in a second-hand couch. The woman waved at someone across the courtyard when she spotted them watching. The wave was casual, bright, oblivious. I watched from my kitchen. Jonah stood beside me, arms still wrapped in a light brace. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. Across the way, the new tenant opened her blinds fully, letting warm lamplight spill out into the night. For a second, I felt something tight in my chest. Not fear, not exactly, awareness. The courtyard hadn't changed. The geography was the same. 50 feet of open air, 3 stories up, windows facing windows, a line anyone could cross. My phone buzzed on the counter. I jumped anyway. It was just a spam call. I let it ring out. Later, when I went to bed, I left the curtains open an inch. Not because I wanted to be watched, because I refused to live in a sealed box. Still, as I lay there in the half-light, I found myself staring at the faint reflection in the glass. The hallway behind me, my own silhouette. And for a brief, irrational second, I thought I saw movement in that reflection, an arm lifting, a hand pressing flat against the pane. I blinked. It was just me, my own hand, raised unconsciously to test the illusion. I lowered it slowly. Outside, the courtyard was quiet. No waving, just windows, just light, and the knowledge that sometimes someone is looking back. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming. Hey everyone, this is Mia Horror Stories, and the title of today's horror story is, I bought a baby monitor for my dog. It started crying. For your comfort, the screen will stay black throughout the video, so you can relax without strain and just focus on the story. Make sure you stick around until the end. Sometimes the last few moments are the ones that stay with you the longest. It started as feedback, not the screechy kind that makes you yank earbuds out. Just a thin, breathy warble coming through the little white speaker on my nightstand, like a radio trying to tune itself in the next room. The baby monitor's screen glowed faint blue, showing a fisheye view of my living room. Couch, coffee table, the crooked framed print I still hadn't leveled, the dog bed in the corner under the window, everything in its place. And then, underneath the soft hiss of the monitor, came a sound that didn't belong in my apartment at all. A baby crying. Not loud, not theatrical. It was the kind of cry that sounds like it started a few seconds ago and won't stop until someone does something about it. I sat up so fast my knee cracked. The sheet slipped off my shoulder. For a second, I just stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to label it neighbor's TV, a weird alert tone, some app on my phone. The cry hiccuped again, a wet catch of breath. Then it rose into a thin wail that made the hairs on my forearm lift. "Buddy," I said, because that's what you say when you don't want to say. "What the hell is that?" From the hallway, I heard claws click once on laminate. A sleepy little woof. Buddy's tag clinked. He padded into my bedroom like he owned it, which he did in the way dogs do. He was a rescue mutt, part beagle, part maybe something with longer legs, tan with a white blaze down his face, and ears that always seemed too big for his head. He blinked at me, then at the monitor, then sat down with a patient sigh like I was the one making the noise. The screen showed him nowhere near the dog bed, which made sense. He was right here, staring at me with his mild, confused eyes. The crying kept going. I picked up the monitor's parent unit, turned it over in my hand, thumbs searching for the volume buttons. It was already at half. I dropped it to 0. The crying didn't stop. My stomach did that small drop it does when an elevator lurches, and my hand went cold around the plastic. I pressed the power button, held it. The screen went dark. The sound continued anyway, fainter, but still there, like it had leaked into the room. Buddy tilted his head, ears cocked, and gave a low, uncertain woof. I sat there in the dim light of my alarm clock, listening to a baby cry in a one-bedroom apartment where there were no babies, no children, no family. Just me and a dog who hated thunder, and it started to get clingy at night after a bad storm in September. My first thought was ghost. It was electronics. It was neighbors. It was I bought the wrong thing. My second thought, faster and uglier, was, did I turn on something I shouldn't have? Because 2 nights ago, I'd spent an hour on my couch, scrolling through reviews and parenting forums like I was about to bring a newborn home instead of a dog who ate socks. I'd bought a baby monitor for Buddy because I'd been coming home to the same scene for a week. Scratched paint near the door, the throw blanket dragged off the couch, and Buddy panting hard like he'd run a mile. My landlord had suggested, in that light, smiling way people suggest things when they're actually warning you, that I keep noise down. The woman across the hall, the one with the long acrylic nails, had knocked once and said, "Your dog has separation anxiety or something," like it was a personal failing of mine. So yes, I bought a monitor, a basic model, no fancy app, no cloud subscription, the kind with a camera and a parent unit and a button that plays lullabies, because apparently the world assumes babies are always one purchase away. I'd set it up on my bookshelf facing Buddy's bed, mostly so I could check on him during my shifts at the restaurant without opening my phone and falling into the black hole of messages from my ex. The crying was doing a thing to my chest. Not fear exactly, more like obligation. Something in the sound hooked under my ribs like a hand. Buddy stood up, pressed his nose to my thigh, and snorted softly. "You're upset." That was all he knew. I got out of bed and walked into the living room barefoot, the floor cold. I flicked the hall light on, then the overhead in the living room. The brightness made everything look plain and a little sad. My mismatched thrift store chairs, the stack of mail, the dog toys I stepped around like landmines. Nothing moved. The cry didn't move either. It seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere. I went to the bookshelf where the camera was perched. The lens looked like a shiny black eye. I put my ear close to it. The crying wasn't coming from the camera. The camera had no speaker. The parent unit had the speaker, but the parent unit was off. Dark, silent in my hand. The crying continued, thin and relentless. I backed up, heart thumping. Buddy followed, nails tapping. I turned my head, trying to locate it like it was a smoke alarm chirp. It felt like it came from the corner by the window. I crossed to the window and put my hand on the glass. Outside, the streetlights painted the parked cars a dull orange. I lived on the second floor of a building in Portland, Oregon, older brick, thin walls, the kind of place where you could hear your neighbor's blender and pretend it was ambient city life. The rain had stopped hours ago, but everything still glistened. Somewhere down the block, someone's heater clicked on with a metallic thunk. The cry went on. Maybe a TV, maybe someone's phone on speaker, maybe a neighbor with a baby, except as far as I knew, there were no babies in this building. It was mostly people in their 20s and 30s, plus a retired guy who smoked on the back steps and acted like the building was his. My brain tried to do math it couldn't do at 2 a.m. Distance, walls, floor plan. I walked to my front door and listened. Just my own breathing. The crying still sounded like it was inside my unit. I opened the door a crack. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and someone's laundry detergent. Quiet. No footsteps. No voices. The cry didn't get louder or softer. It didn't react to the door like real sound would. I shut the door, slower this time, and the latch clicked. Buddy watched me. His eyes kept flicking toward the bookshelf like he didn't trust it. "Okay," I said, not because I had a plan, but because saying a word made the situation feel less slippery. "Okay, we're not doing this." I picked up my phone from the kitchen counter and unlocked it. Lock screen was a photo of Buddy in the car, ears flapping out the window, looking like he'd just discovered wind. I opened the monitor app, except there was no app. That was the point. I flipped the parent unit back on. The screen came up, the living room view, Buddy's bed empty. And then the cry came through the unit's speaker as if it had never stopped at all. I pressed buttons, menu, settings, lullabies. The monitor offered a list: Twinkle, Brahms, Ocean. Like we were at a spa for infants. I hit Ocean by accident and immediately stopped because the last thing I needed was waves layered over a screaming baby. The cry stuttered for half a second, then continued. Buddy gave another low woof, not angry, nervous. I took the unit into the bathroom and shut the door. The cry came with me. I put it in the sink. It cried. I put it in the cabinet under the sink and closed the door. It cried through wood like the wood wasn't there. That's when the thought I'd been refusing slid into place. It's not in the monitor. It's in the signal, in the air, in the frequency. My skin prickled in a way that had nothing to do with cold. I kept the unit pressed to my ear and walked back into the living room. The cry rose and fell breathy, a little ragged, like the baby was getting tired. There was a faint rhythm underneath it, something like a bouncing squeak. And then, for a second, the crying dipped low enough that I heard something else. A voice, not clear, not a sentence. It was the murmur of an adult trying to soothe someone. A SHH that sounded like it came from too close to the mic, like someone cupped their hand over it. I froze, the unit inches from my face. Buddy stopped moving too. His ears went forward, his body went stiff. The voice shifted, and I caught a word maybe. Or maybe my brain made it out of panic and pattern seeking. It sounded like my name. My mouth went dry so fast my tongue stuck to my teeth. I looked at Buddy. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, because whispering felt like a rule that made sense, even though no one was in the room. Buddy stared at the bookshelf camera, then took a step backward like he wanted space between him and the lens. My hands started to tremble, small at first, then enough that the screen jittered in my grip. I hated that about myself, how quickly my body decided it was in danger and started staging a revolt. It wasn't just tonight, it was always. I hadn't told anyone in this building, or at work, or even my sister back in Ohio, but I'd been having these moments lately. Not full panic attacks, just glitches, a sudden rush of dizziness in the grocery store aisle, a sense that my heart was doing something wrong, the private fear that there was something wrong with me, and that if I went to a doctor, I'd have to admit it out loud, and then it would be real. So I'd been doing what I always did, controlling what I could control. Buying the monitor, watching Buddy, managing my world down to small decisions. And now my controlled little purchase was broadcasting a baby crying in the middle of my living room. I set the unit on the coffee table, stepped away, then stepped back and snatched it up again like it might crawl off on its own. I flipped it over and found the sticker with the model and the FCC ID. I'd noticed it earlier when I registered the warranty. There were tiny letters I couldn't pronounce. I opened my laptop, hands clumsy, and typed the model into a search bar. Baby monitor picking up other people. Baby monitor hearing voices. Baby monitor crying sound won't stop. The results were a mess of forum posts and alarmist articles, and people yelling at each other about privacy. Of course, baby monitors picked up other monitors sometimes. People warned about it. I'd even read a line about it and shrugged. It sounded like one of those rare things that only happened to other people. Now it was happening to me, and it didn't feel like static. It didn't feel like accidental crosstalk. It felt like someone had put a microphone in a nursery, and I was the one listening. I clicked through posts. Some said reset it. Some said change channels. Mine didn't have channels. Some said return it. Some said turn off Wi-Fi. Mine wasn't on Wi-Fi. Some said someone hacked it. That made my throat tighten, because hacking was a word that implied intention and hands and a face behind it. I forced myself to breathe in through my nose. The air smelled like wet dog, and the lavender candle I never lit anymore. Okay, grounded, reality. Most likely, signal interference with another monitor. Someone nearby had a baby, or a monitor set up in a room. The sound was leaking into mine. didn't explain the way it followed me when the unit was off. Unless I'd imagined that. Unless I'd been half asleep and the sound was really coming from outside, and I'd carried my fear with me like a speaker. The crying dipped again. The voice murmured. Buddy made a small sound deep in his throat that I felt more than heard. I grabbed my phone and opened my contacts. I scrolled past my sister, past my manager, past my ex, past the number I hadn't deleted because I was weak in a stupid way. I hovered over a name I trusted for practical things, Mara. She lived 3 blocks away. She was the friend who carried jumper cables and always had ibuprofen in her bag. She was also the kind of person who would say, "That's weird," and then immediately start testing the variables. It was 2:17 a.m. I stared at the screen. I didn't want to be the person who called someone in the middle of the night because of a noise. I also didn't want to be alone with a device that might be picking up a stranger's nursery. The crying rose, sharp for a moment, and then it cut just for a second into something that sounded like the baby choking on its own breath. The sound snapped my decision loose. I hit call. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I texted instead, "Are you awake?" Something weird with the baby monitor. Then I texted again because my fingers couldn't sit still. I'm not joking. It's making sounds like a baby. I stared at the monitor. The cry softened into tired whimpers. The adult voice did that SHH again, closer this time, as if the microphone had been moved. I could almost hear fabric rustle. I swallowed and tried something I should have tried first. I pressed the talk button. The little microphone icon appeared on the screen. My voice came out of the camera in the living room, tinny and far away. "Hello," I said, then immediately felt ridiculous, like I was talking to radio. The crying faltered, not stopped, just hitched, like a pause, then resumed. No answer. Buddy moved behind me and leaned against my calves. He was shaking a little. It made me angry, sudden, and hot that a stupid consumer gadget could scare my dog. I unplugged the camera from the wall. The screen on the parent unit went black. The crying continued. Not through the parent unit, this time through the room. Soft, insistently present. Like my apartment had learned a new sound and didn't know how to forget it. I stood there with the plug in my hand, staring at the dead camera, my mind scrambling for the next rational step. Call the non-emergency line. What would I say? "Hi, my baby monitor is crying even when it's unplugged." Knock on doors. At 2 a.m. in pajamas with my dog. My phone buzzed. "Mara, what the hell? I'm awake. Do you want me to come over?" I looked at Buddy. I looked at the dark monitor screen. Listened to the crying, faint now but still there, threaded through the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sigh of traffic. There were 2 choices, and neither felt good. I could stay inside, lock the door, pretend this was interference, and I'd deal with it in the morning like a normal adult. Or I could make it real, bring someone else into it, step into the hallway, knock on a neighbor's door, admit out loud that something in this building sounded wrong. I typed back with shaking thumbs, "Me, yes, please. And don't laugh. Bring your flashlight." Then, because the words were already sitting in my chest like stones, I added "me, and maybe your pepper spray." I hit send. Buddy's nails clicked as he shifted. In the quiet between one whimper and the next, I realized something else, small but undeniable. The crying wasn't random anymore. It was moving subtly, slowly, as if it was getting closer to the front door. And I had to decide, before Mara got here. Whether I was going to open that door and meet whatever ordinary explanation waited on the other side, or stay inside with the sound and let it keep inching toward me. By the time Mara knocked, the crying had stopped. Not faded, not tapered off, just cut. The sudden absence made the apartment feel hollow, like someone had pulled a plug on the air itself. I stood in the middle of the living room with the unplugged camera cord still in my hand and stared at the door. Buddy barked once sharp, defensive. His whole body was wound tight. "Evan," Mara's voice came through the wood. Low, cautious. "It's me." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding and unlocked the deadbolt. When I opened the door, Mara stood there in a hoodie and joggers, hair shoved into a messy bun, her face pale from fluorescent hallway light. She held a small maglite in one hand, and her keys threaded between her fingers like claws. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. Mara Klein, 33, female, civil engineer. The kind of person who trusts load-bearing walls more than people. We met at a trivia night 3 years ago, and she'd been the only one who knew the capital of Latvia and how to change a tire in the rain. She took in the room fast. The unplugged monitor, the laptop open on the coffee table, Buddy vibrating beside my leg. "Okay," she said quietly. "Start at the beginning." I told her, not dramatically, just facts, the feedback, the crying, the voice, how it didn't stop when I powered down the parent unit, how unplugging the camera hadn't done anything. She didn't laugh. She moved to the bookshelf and examined the camera mount like it might confess. "You sure it's not Wi-Fi?" "Positive. I avoided that on purpose." "Why?" "Didn't want something hackable," I said, and heard how that sounded. She gave me a look that wasn't judgmental, but wasn't neutral either. "Everything's hackable." Buddy nudged her knee. She scratched his head automatically, eyes still scanning the room. "Is it happening now?" she asked. "No," my voice felt thin. "It stopped when you knocked." She turned slowly, listening. We stood there in the dim overhead light. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes clicked in the walls. Somewhere below us, a toilet flushed. Nothing else. "Okay," she said finally. "So either it's interference from another monitor in range, or it's coming from inside the building." "It followed me," I said, even when I turned it off. "Are you sure?" Her tone was gentle but pointed. That was the thing about Mara. She didn't coddle, she tested. "I'm sure," I snapped, then immediately hated myself for it. "Sorry, I'm sure," she nodded. "Okay, then let's find it." "Find what?" "The source." She walked to the front door and cracked it open. The hallway was quiet, lit by those dull yellow sconces that made everyone look sick. "If someone has a baby and something's wrong," she said, "we don't ignore it." Right, there it was. The thing my brain had been circling without landing on. If the crying was real, if it wasn't just signal bleed, if there was an actual baby somewhere in this building, then someone might be in trouble. My stomach tightened. We stepped into the hallway together. Buddy tried to follow, and I had to close the door gently in his face, promising through the wood, "I'll be right back." He scratched once, then went quiet. The hallway carpet was old and thin. Every footstep felt loud. Mara kept her flashlight angled down, not wanting to blast anyone's door. "Which direction did it sound like?" she whispered. "That's the problem," I said. "Everywhere." We walked toward the stairwell first. The crying hadn't started again, and that made the whole thing worse somehow. It was like chasing a smell that had already dissipated. At the landing, Mara paused and looked down the stairs. "Could be first floor," she said. Sound travels up. Or third, I said. Ceiling's thin. She glanced at me. You okay? I nodded too quickly. The private fear I hadn't said out loud pressed at the back of my throat. What if it's me? What if I'm hearing something that isn't there? The dizziness at the grocery store. The skipped beats at night. My dad had started hearing things before his breakdown. That was the family story no one told straight. Let's check third first, Mara said, less likely to wake half the building. We climbed. The stairwell smelled faintly of mildew and someone's takeout. On the third floor landing, we stood still and listened. Nothing. Then faint. Not a full cry, a whimper, short, breathy. Mara's eyes snapped to mine. You heard that? Yes, it came again. Softer this time, like someone trying to muffle it. We both turned toward apartment 3B. I frowned. That's Greg Olson, 61, male, retired mechanic. Smoked on the back steps and complained about parking. Lived alone as far as I knew. I'd helped him carry groceries once when his knee was acting up. No wife, no kids, definitely no baby. The whimper came again. Mara moved first, knocking firmly on 3B's door. Greg, she called softly. Hey, it's Mara from downstairs. No answer. She knocked again, louder. The whimper stopped. We stood there, hearts thudding. Greg, I added. It's Evan, everything okay? Silence. Mara tried the knob, locked. She looked at me. Call him. I don't have his number. She exhaled through her nose. Okay. We stood there, listening for another sound. Instead, from behind us, a door opened. Apartment 3A, a woman in her 20s with long acrylic nails, the same neighbor who'd complained about Buddy, peered out. Her eyes were puffy with sleep. What are you doing? She hissed. Did you hear a baby? Mara asked bluntly. The woman blinked. A what? Baby crying, I said, like just now. She stared at us like we were feral. There are no babies up here, she said flatly. It's 2 a.m. Did you hear anything? Mara pressed. The woman hesitated. I heard something earlier, like a TV. I thought it was you. She pointed at me. My chest tightened. Not me, she shrugged. Well, keep it down. She shut her door. Mara and I turned back to 3B. Nothing. No movement. No light under the door. Could be the TV, Mara murmured. Be interference from somewhere else. Or it could be, I didn't finish. She knocked again. Harder. This time, something shifted inside. A scuff, a cough. The door opened a few inches, chain still on. Greg's face appeared in the gap, red-eyed, unshaven. He smelled faintly of cigarettes and something sour. What? He said. Sorry, Mara said quickly. We heard a baby crying from this direction. Greg stared at us. A baby, he repeated. Yes, I said, just now, like right behind your door. His eyes flicked past us down the hall. You too drunk? No, Mara said evenly. He rubbed his face. There's no baby here. Can we just? Mara hesitated. Can we listen for a second? Greg looked offended. You think I got a baby in here? Another sound came from inside. Not a cry this time. A high-pitched electronic squeal. Then silence. Greg's jaw tightened. That your TV? I asked. It's nothing, he snapped. Mara met his eyes. Greg, if there's a kid in there. There's no kid, he said, louder now. You hear me? No kid. The chain slid. The door opened wider. The apartment behind him was dim. The blinds were closed. A lamp glowed in the corner. And on the coffee table, facing the couch, a baby monitor. The exact same model as mine. My breath hitched. Greg saw where I was looking. It's not what you think, he said quickly. What do we think? Mara asked. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. My daughter. She had a baby last month. She drops by sometimes. I keep the monitor set up in case she leaves him here. At 2 in the morning, I said before I could stop myself. She doesn't, he said sharply. He's not here. The monitor on his table was on. The screen showed a room I didn't recognize. A crib, a mobile, dim light, and from the tiny speaker, a baby's soft, intermittent cry. The same cry. Mara stepped forward, peering at the screen. That's live, Greg hesitated. Yes. Where is that? She asked. My daughter's place, he said, across town. Then why is it here? I asked. He swallowed. Because she asked me to keep an eye on him while she sleeps. The signal reaches, Mara frowned. No way, these things don't reach across town. Greg's face flushed. It does, I boosted it. How? She asked. He didn't answer. The baby cried again, louder this time. I felt something inside me tilt. Why didn't you say that when we knocked? I asked. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Because it's none of your business. The cry spiked. Sharp, desperate. Mara's jaw clenched. Greg, that doesn't sound like someone just sleeping. He stared at the monitor. His hand trembled slightly. She's fine, he muttered. Who? I said, my daughter. Another sound came through the speaker. Not soothing, not SHH, a thud. Greg's face went gray. That didn't sound fine, Mara said quietly. Greg lunged for the monitor, fumbling with the buttons. Greg, I said, my heart hammering. What did you boost? He didn't answer. The baby's cry turned ragged. Continuous now. Mara reached for her phone. We need the address. Greg's head snapped up. No police. If there's a baby in distress, she'll lose him, he snapped. You don't understand. Then help us understand, I said, stepping closer. For a moment, it felt like the hallway had shrunk around us. Greg looked between us, cornered. She's not stable, he said finally. Postpartum. She won't admit it. If someone shows up, another thud. Louder. The baby's cry hit a pitch that made Buddy's bark echo faintly from downstairs. Mara didn't hesitate this time. She dialed 911. Greg grabbed her wrist. Don't. The movement was quick, instinctive. Mara yanked her arm back. Don't touch me. I stepped between them without thinking. Greg, give us the address. He stared at me, eyes wet now. If they take him, if he's hurt, I shot back. The monitor screen flickered. For a second, the crib view shifted, like the camera had been bumped. And then the image tilted sideways. The baby's crying didn't stop. Mara's thumb hovered over the call button. Evan, she said, voice tight. We don't have time. Greg looked at the monitor like it was a loaded gun. Okay, he whispered. Okay. He rattled off an address in southeast Portland, an apartment complex I vaguely knew, near Division. Mara relayed it to the dispatcher in clipped, controlled sentences. As she spoke, I watched the screen. The camera had settled at an angle. I could see part of the crib, the mobile spinning slowly. The crying went on, then footsteps. Not on our end, on the monitor, slow, uneven, approaching the crib. Greg made a strangled sound. The shadow crossed the screen. And just before the image cut to static, I heard a voice. Not a stranger, not a woman, a man's voice, low. Who's listening? The screen went black. The crying stopped. The hallway felt suddenly too small. Mara ended the call. Greg stared at the dead monitor, chest heaving. I realized something that hadn't occurred to me until that exact second. That voice, it hadn't been coming from Greg's apartment across town. It had been close. Close enough that the audio distortion matched the way it had sounded in my living room. Close enough that the interference might not be distance at all. I turned slowly toward the stairwell. From downstairs, faint. A baby crying. The crying from downstairs wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It threaded up through the stairwell like steam, thin and persistent, slipping into the space between our breaths. Mara and I looked at each other. Greg didn't move. "That's not across town," Mara said quietly. No one argued. The building's layout was simple: 3 floors, 2 units per floor, stairwell in the middle, laundry and storage in the basement, front door at street level, back exit through a narrow corridor behind the first floor units. If the sound was coming from downstairs, it had to be one of 3 places: 1A, 1B, or the basement. "Greg," I said, forcing my voice steady, "is there anyone staying with you? Anyone who could be using that monitor here?" He shook his head too fast. Mara was already moving toward the stairs. "We check first floor," she said. "If it's nothing, we wait for police at the address you gave." The word police made Greg flinch. I followed Mara down. The stairwell light buzzed overhead. My legs felt strangely heavy, like I'd run a mile, even though it had been maybe 20 steps. Halfway down, the crying got clearer. Not electronic now, not distorted, real. It had the uneven rhythm of a baby who'd been crying long enough to be tired. Short gasps between wails, wet hiccups. My skin prickled. At the first floor landing, we paused. The sound was strongest toward 1A apartment. 1A belonged to Louis and Anna Morales, both in their late 20s. Louis worked construction. Anna worked nights at a hospital. I'd met them in the laundry room once. They had no kids. Mara knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder. "Louis, Anna," the crying spiked. I swallowed. "It's inside." Mara tried the knob, locked. "Call again," she muttered, meaning 911. "I thought you already, that was for the other address. This is different." The crying turned frantic. I felt something in my chest twist. This was the moment where you either act or spend the rest of your life wondering. "I'm kicking it," I said. Mara shot me a look. "We don't know that's necessary. Listen to it." She hesitated 1 second too long. I stepped back and drove my heel into the door near the handle. The wood boomed. Pain shot up my leg. The crying didn't stop. "Evan," I kicked again. The frame splintered slightly. The door flew inward on the third kick, chain snapping. We stumbled inside. Dark. The apartment smelled faintly of bleach and something sweet, laundry detergent maybe. The crying echoed off the walls, louder now. Mara swung her flashlight beam across the room. Couch, TV, coffee table. No crib. The crying was coming from the kitchen. I moved first, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The kitchen light was off. The sound was coming from the counter. Mara's beam found it. A phone, face up, screen cracked, playing a video. A baby crying. Looping. The screen showed a grainy clip of a baby in a crib. Same angle as the monitor earlier. Same mobile. Video timer reset to 0, 0, 0. It started again. I stood there, breath ragged. Mara exhaled sharply. Jesus. I picked up the phone. The lock screen was disabled. No passcode required. The video app was YouTube. It wasn't a social media platform I recognized. Just a plain video file playing on repeat. The file name, vid202601142213. Today's date. Whose phone? I asked. Mara scanned the counter. No purse. No keys. No signs of a break-in. Then we heard it. Footsteps behind us. I spun, adrenaline spiking. Louis stood in the hallway in sweatpants, eyes wide, hands raised. "What the hell are you doing in my apartment?" he demanded. My stomach dropped. "We heard," I started. "A baby," Mara said quickly. "It sounded like it was in here." Louis stared at the phone in my hand. "That's mine." "Why is it playing a baby crying video at 2:30 in the morning?" Mara asked. He looked embarrassed, then angry. "It's for my sister," he said. "She's trying to get her newborn to sleep." I recorded a clip of him crying so she can, learn the difference between hunger cries and tired cries. She asked me to send it. I was editing it. "At 2:30, I repeated. "I work early," he snapped. "I'm up." The explanation was thin but plausible. Mara stepped back. "We're sorry. It sounded real." "It is real," he said defensively. "It's my nephew." My face burned. I handed him the phone. I muttered. Louis looked from me to the broken doorframe. "You kicked my door in." The weight of that hit hard. "I'll pay for it," I said immediately. You thought what? That there was a baby dying in your kitchen." But I couldn't say that without sounding unhinged. Mara put a hand on my arm. "We'll handle it, I promise." Louis shook his head, muttering under his breath, and walked back toward his bedroom. The crying on his phone looped again before he stopped it. Silence filled the apartment. Except from above us, faintly the baby cried. Mara and I froze. Louis turned slowly. "That's not me," he said. The crying wasn't coming from his phone now. It was drifting down through the ceiling. From 2A, my apartment. Buddy barked once, sharp. My heart lurched. "That's my place," I said. Mara didn't wait this time. She was already moving toward the door. We sprinted up the stairs. The crying grew louder with each step. Buddy was barking continuously now, frantic. When we reached my floor, my apartment door was closed. But the crying, it was unmistakably inside. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking so hard I dropped them. Mara snatched them up and unlocked the door. Buddy barreled into the hallway, hackles raised, teeth bared in a way I'd never seen before. The crying was coming from the living room. Mara pushed past me. The bookshelf camera sat where I'd left it, unplugged. The parent unit was on the coffee table. On. The screen lit up, showing my living room from a different angle. The image wasn't from my camera on the bookshelf. It was from somewhere lower, near the floor, pointed at Buddy's bed, and from the speaker, the baby cried. My stomach dropped through the floor. "That's not possible," Mara whispered. I hadn't plugged it back in. I hadn't turned it on. Yet it was broadcasting. Buddy lunged toward the coffee table, barking at the parent unit like it was alive. Mara grabbed it. The feed flickered. The angle shifted slightly, as if someone had nudged the unseen camera. The crying cut abruptly. Then a rustling sound from under the couch. We both turned. The couch skirt trembled. For half a second, my brain supplied something impossible. Then the fabric lifted. A small black rectangle slid out. A camera, not mine, smaller, aftermarket, with a wired battery pack taped to it. Mara swore under her breath. I stared at it, nausea rising. Someone had placed it under my couch. Buddy growled low. The camera's lens reflected the ceiling light like a dark pupil. Mara crouched slowly, keeping distance, and shone her flashlight under the couch. "There's more," she said. My throat tightened. 2 more devices, all angled toward the center of the room. My living room, my dog's bed, my door. "They're piggybacking the frequency," Mara murmured, half to herself. "That's how it's crossing." My mind raced. Greg had said he boosted his monitor. Someone else had boosted theirs. The crying wasn't just interference. It was intentional. As if on cue, the parent unit in Mara's hand crackled. A man's voice came through. Clear, close. "Finally," he said softly. Every muscle in my body went rigid. The voice wasn't echoing from Greg's apartment. It wasn't distorted by distance. It sounded like it was in the room. Mara's grip tightened on the unit. "Who is this?" A pause, then a quiet chuckle. "You shouldn't have opened the door." The front door behind us creaked. Slowly, I turned. It wasn't wide open, just unlatched. I was certain I'd locked it. Buddy barked, feral and loud. Mara moved without thinking. She grabbed her pepper spray from her hoodie pocket and positioned herself between me and the door. "Call 911, she said through clenched teeth. I couldn't move. The parent unit crackled again. "You left it unlocked earlier," the voice said conversationally. "When you went upstairs." My mind flashed back. In the rush, in the sprint, had I? The hallway light flickered through the crack in the door. A shadow shifted on the other side. Heavy, adult. The crying began again. Not from the monitor, from the hallway, right outside my apartment. My chest constricted. Mara whispered, "Back up." We took one step, then another. Buddy's growl deepened. The doorknob turned, slowly. The latch clicked, and I realized something cold and absolute. Whoever had planted those cameras, whoever had been listening, wasn't just in the building. They were on this floor, and they knew we were home. The door began to open. The door opened like it was trying not to make a sound. Just a slow inward swing, a slice of hallway light widening across my entryway rug. Mara had her pepper spray up, elbow tucked, body angled the way you angle when you've decided you might have to hurt someone, but you're still praying you won't. Buddy stood in front of us, legs spread, growl coming from deep in his chest like a motor. The crying in the hallway stopped. That was the part that made my mouth go dry. Like whoever was out there had gotten what they wanted and no longer needed the noise. A shape filled the gap, not a masked monster, not some movie silhouette, just a man in a dark hoodie with the hood half up, head lowered, one hand on the doorknob like he belonged to it. He was average height, maybe a little stocky, with a shaved head that caught the hallway light. A messenger bag strap crossed his chest. He didn't rush. He stepped in like this was his apartment, and he'd forgotten something. My heart hammered so hard my vision pulsed. Mara said very clearly, "Stop, back out." Now, the man's head tilted slightly, listening to the cadence of her voice like he was deciding which version of her he was dealing with. Then he smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't gleeful. It was more like recognition. "Hey," he said softly. "Easy." Buddy lunged, barking, and the man flinched back a half step. His hand dipped toward his bag. Mara didn't wait for whatever came next. She sprayed. The stream hit him across the face and mouth. His smile vanished instantly, replaced by a shocked animal sound. He staggered backward into the hallway, hands clawing at his eyes. "Ah, Jesus," he gagged, stumbling. For one clean second, everything aligned. We had distance. He was blinded. The door was open behind him. Mara barked. "Evan, close the door, lock it, call 911. I moved like my brain was underwater. My hand hit the edge of the door, shoved it. The man slammed a shoulder into it from the hall. The door bounced back toward me. He'd recovered faster than I expected. Or maybe pepper spray was different when you were prepared for it. Maybe he'd practiced. That thought made my stomach flip. He pushed again, stronger. The door smacked my forearm. Pain shot up to my elbow. Buddy snapped at the man's ankle through the gap, teeth clacking, missing by inches. The man cursed, voice thick with tears and rage. "Get your dog." Mara jammed her foot into the doorframe and pushed back with her hip. I shoved our shoulders against wood. The door shuddered. His hand appeared, fingers scrabbling for purchase on the inside edge. Mara sprayed again, right at the hand and face. He recoiled with a wet, choking sound. The door slammed shut. The deadbolt clicked into place under my shaking thumb. For a beat, we stood there panting in the dim living room, ears tuned to the hallway. Buddy scratched at the door, barking in short bursts like he was telling the building itself to back off. Mara's eyes were huge. "Call," she hissed. I fumbled for my phone. My fingers slid on the screen. I dialed 911 and put it on speaker because I didn't trust myself to hold it steady. It rang once, twice. I heard footsteps outside, fast, heavy, moving away down the hall. Then another sound, a soft metallic clink, like someone dropping something. The dispatcher answered, calm and bright, and I babbled anyway. "Someone's trying to get into my apartment, second floor. He has cameras under my couch. Baby, monitor, please." Mara grabbed the phone. "This is Mara Klein. 2A intruder attempted entry just now. Pepper spray deployed. He's in the hallway. We have reason to believe he planted surveillance devices inside the unit." The dispatcher's voice sharpened just a touch. Questions, description, weapons, injuries. Mara kept answering while I stared at the coffee table, at the parent unit still in her hand. The screen was lit again, not showing my living room now. Static, but the audio crackled, a breath. Then, very quietly, the baby cried again like a test tone, like he was checking if we were still listening. Mara looked at it like it was contaminated and set it down hard. "We need to get out," she said low. "He knows the layout. He knows where you live. If he comes back with something, and go where?" I snapped, then regretted it. Down the stairs, past him, Mara's jaw worked. Back exit. The back exit led through the corridor behind the first floor units to the alley. I'd used it once to haul a broken chair to the dumpster. "There's a basement door," I said, "between the stairwell and the laundry. He could be there." Mara's eyes flicked to the living room window. "Fire escape. We don't have one." Dispatcher was still talking through the speaker, asking if we could stay inside, lock the door, wait for officers. I wanted to follow those instructions like they were rope. But the thought of staying in this apartment, my apartment with hidden cameras under the couch, made my throat constrict. Every object felt complicit. The couch, the bookshelf, the corners of the ceiling. Buddy paced in tight circles, whining now, then barking again at the door. Mara ended the call with a clipped, "We'll stay put," then turned to me. "We can't just sit." "We can," I said, voice shaking. "We can lock everything and wait." She looked at me for a long second, reading something I didn't want her to read. Not just fear of him, but fear of myself. Fear that I'd overreacted. Fear that the evidence would evaporate. Fear that the cops would look at me and see a guy who kicked in a neighbor's door and claimed a baby was crying in the walls. That fear made me want to do something tangible, something that proved I wasn't crazy. Mara said, "Show me the cameras again." I dropped to my knees and reached under the couch. My hand found the first device, smooth plastic, taped battery pack, still warm from being powered. When I pulled it out, Buddy barked like it was prey. Mara crouched beside me, flashlight beam steady. 3, she counted, plus your original. "And the parent unit's receiving," I said, voice tight. "Even with my camera unplugged." "Analog," she murmured. "Or mixed, cheap frequency hopping." She looked angry now, not afraid. "He's using it like a walkie-talkie." "Like a lure," I swallowed. "Why a baby?" Mara's mouth pressed into a line. "Because people respond. Because it makes you open doors. Because it made me open mine," I thought, and felt nauseous. From the hallway, a door opened somewhere down the line. A man's voice, half asleep, confused, asked, "What's going on?" Another voice answered, sharp, "A woman." "Maybe 3A then," faintly, a thump on the stairwell door, like someone pushing it open and letting it swing. Buddy froze, ears up. Mara went still. The sound came again, closer. The stairwell door was on our floor, 10 feet down the hall. If he doubled back, Mara whispered, "Lights off." I flicked the overhead off. The apartment fell into gray. Only the streetlight glow leaked through the blinds. Mara pulled me away from the living room window, toward the kitchen, where we'd be less visible if he looked in. Buddy stayed at the front door, silent now, tail stiff. The thump came again, then a soft scrape. Something slid along the hallway wall outside, fabric against paint. My breath came shallow. Mara held her pepper spray in both hands like a fragile weapon. The lock clicked, not ours, a neighbor's. Someone stepping into the hall. A voice said, "Hey, you okay?" Then, "Holy, what is that?" A man yelped. A stumbling sound. A body hitting the carpet. Mara's eyes widened. I inched closer to the peephole, put my eye to it. The hallway view warped through the lens. I saw the stairwell door half open, spilling that sickly yellow light. A figure crouched near it, hoodie, shaved head, hands moving fast at something on the floor. Not a weapon, a small device. He dropped it earlier. The metallic clink. A neighbor, young guy from 2B, I think, stood barefoot a few feet away, bent forward in confusion, rubbing his face like he'd gotten spray in his eyes. The intruder had pepper spray too. The intruder looked up, right into my peephole. For a second, I couldn't move. Even through warped glass, I felt seen. He said something, not loud, just enough for the hallway. "Go back inside." The neighbor hesitated. The intruder surged forward, grabbed the neighbor's hoodie collar, and shoved him back toward his door. The neighbor stumbled, half blind, slamming into his own frame. The intruder spun toward the stairwell again, clutching the device. And then his gaze snapped to my door, like he knew exactly where Mara and I were standing behind it. Mara whispered, "He's not leaving." But he started growling again, low and steady. The intruder stepped toward our door, not fast, measured. He lifted his hand and knocked, 3 taps, polite. My stomach turned. Mara's voice, barely audible, "Don't answer." The baby monitor on the coffee table crackled to life. The baby cried louder now, closer to a scream. Then the man's voice came through the speaker, calm as a coworker. "I can do this all night," it said, "but your dog can't." Buddy whined at the sound of his name, or maybe just the tone. He backed up a step, then lunged again toward the door, confused and furious. Mara mouthed, "Ignore him." Another knock. Then, "Evan," my name hit like a slap. Mara's face hardened. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me away from the entry, toward the kitchen again. "He wants you at the door," she whispered. "He wants you, impulsive." I wanted to ask how he knew my name, but we both knew. The cameras, the listening, the files on Lewis's phone, the timestamps, the address Greg gave. Way everything kept funneling back to my unit. The crying surged again, and for a second I hated the sound so much I wanted to smash the parent unit against the wall until it was powder. I imagined it shattering, imagined silence. Instead, the doorknob turned, slow, testing, locked, but the knob kept turning anyway, like he was evaluating the lock. Then a new sound, metal on metal. A thin scrape. Mara's eyes widened. "Is he?" The deadbolt rattled. My stomach dropped. He has something. A credit card, a pick, a tool. The deadbolt wasn't supposed to be easy. But neither were cameras under couches, and here we were. Buddy barked wildly. Mara grabbed a kitchen chair with her free hand and shoved it under the doorknob, wedging it at an angle. "If it gives," she said through clenched teeth, "it slows him." Another scrape. The bolt shifted a fraction. My chest tightened until breathing felt like work. I pictured him getting in, pictured the hallway lights spilling over my living room, pictured him stepping around Buddy like Buddy was an obstacle. Mara whispered, "Bathroom." "What? Small space. Only one way in. We can brace it. If he gets through, we don't fight him in the open." My mind rebelled. The bathroom felt like a trap. But the door shook again. The deadbolt clicked, just slightly, like it was being coaxed. Mara grabbed the flashlight and thrust it at me. "Go, now." I scooped Buddy's collar with one hand. He resisted, growling, but I hauled him with me toward the hallway bathroom. Mara followed, moving backward, pepper spray up, eyes never leaving the entry door. The baby monitor screamed from the living room. Not a baby now. Feedback, warbling. A siren-like oscillation that made my teeth ache. Mara slammed the bathroom door and shoved the hamper against it. I pushed my shoulder into the frame, bracing. We stood there in the dark bathroom, the smell of toothpaste and wet towels, Buddy pressed against my shin, trembling. The entry door creaked again, then banged. The chair scraped across the floor. Wood cracked. Mara's breath came fast. Hold, another bang. The sound of the chair falling. A heavy thud boots inside the apartment. My stomach lurched. He was in. Buddy growled, deep and vibrating, but he didn't bark. Like his instincts had shifted from warning to surviving. Footsteps moved across the living room. Slow, deliberate, a pause. Then a soft scrape near the couch, the sound of something being picked up, like plastic on carpet. He was collecting the cameras, taking the evidence. Mara's eyes flicked to mine in the dark. Cost. I understood without words. If he left with the devices, he left with control of the narrative. The bathroom handle jiggled once, twice. Mara raised the pepper spray. Her other hand trembled slightly. The handle stopped. Silence. Then the baby cry again, this time right outside the bathroom door, impossibly close. I squeezed my eyes shut, not because I believed in ghosts, but because my brain couldn't reconcile the acoustics. It was just a speaker. It had to be. He had a small device like the one he'd dropped. Mara whispered, "It's a speaker. It's meant to make you open the door." Buddy made a small, broken whine. And then, under the baby cry, I heard something else. A soft, electronic chirp, like a device powering down. Then another. He was turning off the cameras as he took them, cleaning up. My fear shifted into something sharper. I leaned close to Mara's ear. "He's taking them." Mara's jaw tightened. The bathroom door handle moved again. This time harder. The hamper shifted. My shoulders strained against the frame. Mara hissed, "If it opens, spray and run past him to the stairwell. Don't stop. Run past him." Past the man who had been watching us through hidden lenses. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The handle jerked again. The door bowed inward a hair. Mara sprayed through the crack, blind, desperate. A startled shout. A cough. A thud against the wall. For 1 second, the pressure on the door eased. Mara flung it open. We surged out. The apartment was dim and chaotic. The chair lay on its side near the entry, door ajar. The baby monitor parent unit was gone from the coffee table, either knocked or taken. Intruder was in the living room, bent over my couch, one of the cameras in his hand. His face was streaked with tears and mucus from the spray. His eyes were red, furious. He looked up as we burst out, and Buddy launched. It happened so fast it didn't feel real until Buddy's teeth sank into the man's forearm. The man screamed high and raw and swung his other arm wildly. His fist connected with Buddy's shoulder with a sick thud. Buddy yelped, but didn't let go. Mara shouted, "Buddy, Buddy," grabbed Buddy's collar, trying to pull him back, terrified he'd get kicked, terrified he'd get stabbed, terrified of everything at once. The man staggered, wrenching his arm free with a ripping motion that made my stomach roll. Blood smeared down his skin. Buddy stumbled back, growling, foam at his lips, eyes wild. The man clutched his arm and reached into his bag. Not for a knife, for something small and rectangular, a phone. He raised it, camera pointed at us. A flash. My body jolted like I'd been hit. "What insurance?" he rasped, voice wet. "Proof." Mara surged forward and slapped the phone out of his hand. It skittered across the floor, clattering against the baseboard. He swung at her blind and furious, and his knuckles caught her cheekbone. Mara stumbled back, hitting the bookshelf. The unplugged baby monitor camera toppled and hit the floor with a sharp crack. I felt a cold clarity snap into place. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a weird tech coincidence. This was a person willing to hit someone in my living room at 3 a.m. I grabbed the nearest thing, my heavy cast iron skillet from the kitchen counter, stupidly left out from dinner. My hand shook around the handle. The man saw it and took a step back, eyes wide now, calculating. He looked toward the open front door. He was going to bolt. He'd take whatever he could and disappear into the stairwell, into the building, into the night. Mara, breathing hard, one hand on her cheek, said, "Drop it." He laughed through a cough. "Or what?" I didn't answer with words. I threw the skillet. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't heroic. It was pure panic and anger and the instinct to stop him. The skillet hit his shoulder with a dull, brutal sound. He cried out and staggered sideways, slamming into my coffee table. The table tipped, sending mail and a glass tumbler crashing to the floor. The tumbler shattered. The sound was violent and ordinary. The man fell, scrambling, palms sliding on glass fragments. He tried to stand. Buddy snapped again, teeth grazing his calf. The man kicked out, catching Buddy's ribcage. Buddy yelped, a sound that tore something open in my chest, and retreated, limping. "No," I shouted, and it came out strangled. I lunged forward and grabbed the man's bag strap, yanking hard. He lost balance and hit the floor again, chin cracking against the laminate. Blood appeared immediately, bright and real. He lay there stunned, blinking. Mara was on him before I could think, knee to his lower back, weight pinning, pepper spray ready. "Hands," she said, voice shaking with adrenaline. "Hands where I can see them." He tried to roll. Mara pressed down harder. "Don't." I stood over them, chest heaving, listening for sirens that weren't there yet. From the hallway, a door opened again. A voice shouted, "Police are coming." Louis, first floor, appeared at the top of the stairs, eyes huge. I heard screaming, "What the hell? Call them again," Mara barked. "Tell them second floor now." Louis vanished back down. The intruder wheezed under Mara's knee. "You broke into 1A, he rasped, and the sentence was wrong but purposeful. "You assaulted me." "I was trying to—" "Shut up," Mara said, and her voice wavered for the first time. He was trying to shape the story. My stomach churned. Buddy lay near the kitchen doorway, panting hard, one paw tucked. His eyes were locked on the man, ears back, body tense with pain and loyalty. I knelt beside Buddy and ran my hand gently along his side. He flinched at a spot near his ribs. "Hey," I whispered. Hey, you're okay, you're okay. I wasn't sure if I was telling him or myself. The intruder coughed. You don't know who you just... Stop talking, Mara said again, harsher. In the harsh overhead light, I could see the man more clearly. He wasn't a stranger. I'd seen him around. Not in my friend's circle, not in my unit, but in the building. A man who sometimes lingered by the mailboxes, pretending to sort envelopes. A man who held doors too long, eyes too steady. His name hit me from a memory of the tenant list posted near the front entrance. Nolan Price, 38, male. Unit 1B IT contractor, according to the little bio he once offered at a building meeting like it was casual. My throat tightened. You live here? Nolan's mouth twitched. So do you. Sirens finally rose in the distance, faint at first, then growing. Mara's shoulders sagged a fraction in relief that looked like exhaustion. Nolan's eyes shifted to the open door again, to the hallway beyond. His breathing changed quick, shallow. He was thinking about a last move. Mara said, as if reading him, don't. He did anyway. He bucked hard, twisting. Mara's knee slipped on the laminate. Nolan surged toward the door, half crawling, half running. I grabbed for him and caught fabric. He ripped away, leaving the hoodie bunched in my fist. He burst into the hallway. Mara sprinted after him. Wait, I started, but she was already gone, adrenaline overriding caution. I ran too, barefoot, stepping on a glass shard and feeling it bite into my heel. Pain flared hot and immediate. I almost went down, caught myself on the wall, left a smear of blood. In the hallway, Mara had Nolan by the back of his shirt. He slammed her into the wall hard enough to rattle the sconce. She grunted, still holding on. Nolan tore free and barreled down the stairs. Mara chased. I limped after them, each step a fresh stab in my heel, vision tunneling. On the first floor landing, Nolan hit the stairwell door with his shoulder and shoved it open. He stumbled into the lobby, and then he stopped, not because he chose to, because the front building door swung open from outside, and two uniformed officers entered, flashlights up, faces sharp. Officer Dana Whitaker, 41, female, and Officer Jamal Reed, 36, male, names I caught later through the haze. But right then, they were simply authority and consequence. Nobody move, Officer Reed shouted. Nolan froze like a glitching video. Mara skidded to a stop behind him, breathing hard, hair flying loose. I staggered onto the landing, blood on my foot, one hand gripping the banister so tight my knuckles ached. Nolan raised his hands slowly, eyes wide, breathing fast. Officer Whitaker's flashlight beam hit his face, then swept over Mara, then me. What happened? She demanded. Mara spoke fast. He broke into my friend's unit. We found hidden cameras. He attacked us. Nolan coughed, voice slick with performance. They kicked in a door downstairs, broke into 1A. I went up to check because I heard. Shut up, Officer Reed snapped, stepping forward and cuffing him with swift, practiced movements. Nolan flinched as the cuffs tightened. Tears streaked his cheeks, not from pain, I realized, but from pepper spray still burning. Officer Whitaker looked at me. Sir, are you injured? My foot, I managed, and then, stupidly, my dog. The officers exchanged a glance. Procedures. Triage. Behind us, someone in the lobby, Lewis, maybe, said, That's him. That's the guy from B. He's always weird. Nolan jerked his head toward the voice. His eyes were venomous. Then his gaze flicked to me, and he smiled again, small, private, as if this was not the end, just a pause. Officer Reed guided him toward the door. You're under arrest. As they moved Nolan outside, the building's old pipes groaned softly in the walls, and in the sudden quiet that followed the chaos, I heard it. Very faint. From somewhere, maybe a phone left running, maybe a device still powered a baby crying. Just a few seconds, then nothing. But it was long enough to plant itself in my body deep, where sounds live after you've survived something. I leaned against the stairwell wall, breath ragged, and Mara slid down beside me. One hand pressed to her cheekbone like she was trying to hold her face together. Buddy barked from upstairs, frantic, calling for me. I tried to stand. Pain shot through my heel, and I swayed. Mara grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, grounding. "Don't be stupid," she whispered. My eyes burned, not from pepper spray, from the realization that my home wasn't a place anymore. It was a location someone had mapped, that a stranger had watched Buddy sleep, watched me pace, heard my voice, heard my fear. And he'd used a baby's cry, something hardwired in every decent person, to pull us into his reach. The sirens faded outside as the officers dealt with Nolan. Inside, the building settled back into itself, as if it could pretend nothing had happened. But my body couldn't. Mara's face was swelling already. My heel bled steadily. And upstairs, Buddy kept barking, because he didn't understand why the danger wasn't gone the moment the man left. Maybe it was. By 4 a.m, my apartment didn't look like a crime scene the way TV teaches you it should. It looked like a place where 2 exhausted people had tried to survive a bad night. The coffee table was tipped on its side, mail scattered like leaves. The skillet lay near the couch where it had bounced and clanged after I threw it. The bookshelf had a dent in the wall where Mara hid it, and my baby monitor camera, my original one, sat on the floor in 2 pieces like a cheap toy that had finally admitted what it was. Buddy paced in a tight loop between the kitchen and the living room, favoring his right side, stopping every few steps to look toward the open front door. The officers had insisted the door stay open while they cleared the unit. And even after they were done, after they had walked through my bedroom, opened my closet, checked behind the shower curtain like anyone would hide there, my nervous system didn't seem to understand that cleared meant safe. Officer Whitaker was still inside, her notepad out, asking questions in a voice that stayed calm no matter what she wrote down. "What time did you first hear the crying?" she asked, like we were discussing a smoke alarm. Mara sat at my kitchen table, one of my dish towels pressed to her cheekbone. Her face was already blooming purple and yellow near her eye. Pepper spray residue had turned her nostrils pink, and she kept blinking like her eyes were gritty. Officer Reed was in the hallway, speaking to someone in low tones. Greg, I realized, standing in his doorway like a ghost of himself. He had a blanket draped over his shoulders and kept glancing down the stairs, as if Nolan might sprint back up any second. Lewis stood behind Reed, barefoot and furious, gesturing with both hands as he talked too fast. His broken door hung in the background of everything like a silent accusation. And me, I was sitting on the floor by the couch with my heel wrapped in paper towels and duct tape, waiting for an ambulance that hadn't arrived yet because my injury, as Officer Whitaker gently reminded me, wasn't life-threatening. I kept looking at the spot under the couch where we'd found the hidden cameras, like my gaze could keep them from multiplying. "Evan," Mara said quietly, using the tone she used when she'd already decided something. "You need to let them take pictures." I hadn't even realized I was blocking Officer Whitaker's view until she shifted around me. "Sorry," I said, then immediately, Can you check again? Under the couch, I mean." Whitaker nodded like she'd heard that request 100 times and got down on one knee. She swept her flashlight beam under the couch. Dust bunnies, a lost tennis ball, nothing else visible. "We'll have our techs come in the morning," she said. "They'll do a more thorough sweep. In the morning." Like I was supposed to sleep between now and then. The ambulance finally arrived around 4:20. 2 EMTs who looked like they'd been woken up mid-dream and had learned to perform kindness as a routine. They introduced themselves, one tall guy, one shorter woman, and asked me to rate my pain, asked if I'd hit my head, asked if I had any allergies. When the woman crouched and peeled back the duct tape, the paper towels came away sticky with blood. She sucked in a breath. "That's a decent piece of glass." I stared at the white shards embedded in the tape and felt my stomach roll. The tall EMT asked, "How'd this happen?" I started to answer and got stuck halfway through because there wasn't a short version that didn't sound like a story you'd tell at a bar. "I ran down the stairs," I said finally. "Barefoot." "Of course you did," Mara muttered, not unkindly. "They cleaned it as best they could in my living room, numbed around the puncture, and pulled out a shard with forceps. The sensation wasn't pain exactly, more like pressure and a weird relief. Like removing a thorn you didn't realize you were constantly bracing around. Then they wrapped it tight and told me it needed stitches anyway because the cut was deep and the risk of infection was high. "You should go to the ER," the woman said. "Tonight." I looked at Buddy. Buddy had stopped pacing and was sitting now, chest heaving, eyes tracking every movement. His ribs looked fine, but when I moved my hand near his side, he flinched again. "And my dog," I said. The EMT woman glanced at him. "He needs a vet." Mara leaned forward. "There's an emergency vet on Stark," she said. "We can do both. I'll drive." Officer Whitaker looked up sharply. "Your friend should not be driving with a head injury." Mara's laugh was short. "I don't have a head injury." Whitaker's eyebrow rose. "You were punched. Hard." Mara touched her cheekbone and winced. "Okay, fine. I'll Uber or Lewis can." From the hallway, Lewis said, "I can drive. I'm awake now." His voice was tight with anger, but he looked at Buddy with something gentler. I hated needing anything from anyone. That was my private flaw, the one I'd been feeding for years, this belief that if I could just manage everything myself, I'd never have to feel small. Tonight had made that belief ridiculous. "Thank you," I said to Lewis, and meant it. Officer Whitaker finished her questions, then asked one I'd been dreading. "Do you have any prior contact with Nolan Price?" she said. I shook my head. "Any disputes? Noise complaints? Parking? Anything?" "No," I said. "I've seen him around the mailboxes, that's it." "And you kicked in a door downstairs," she added, pen poised. My face burned. Mara started. "We heard, I corrected, and my voice came out thin. I heard crying. I thought it was a baby in danger." Lewis made a sound like he swallowed an insult. Whitaker nodded slowly. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. Nolan is being taken in for questioning. We have probable cause for burglary and assault based on," her gaze flicked to Mara's face, to my wrapped foot, "injury and witness statements. We'll also pursue charges related to unlawful surveillance if we find devices installed." "If," Mara said sharply. Whitaker's expression didn't change. "We still need to document them properly." "What if he already took them?" I asked, and my stomach tightened. "He was collecting them." Officer Reed stepped in then, expression serious. We recovered 2 devices on the stairwell landing and 1 in the hallway near your door, he said. Small cameras, battery packs. We bagged them. Relief hit me so hard my eyes stung. And his phone, Mara asked. Reed nodded. We got it. He dropped it when you knocked it away. It's in evidence. Mara's shoulders sagged for the first time, tension bleeding out. And Greg, I asked, because my mind still had that earlier address wedged in it like a splinter. Officer Reed looked toward the 3rd floor stairwell. We spoke with Mr. Olson. He admits he had a monitor in his apartment and that he gave an address to dispatch. We've asked units to check it. What if it's, I started, then stopped. What if there really was a baby? Reed's face was careful. We'll follow up. That was all I got. The officers left around 5, after taking photos, bagging the broken monitor pieces and the devices they'd recovered, and taping a strip across my doorframe like a thin promise. The tape didn't make me feel safe. It made me feel like my apartment belonged to the state now, temporarily. When the hallway finally quieted and the adrenaline drained out of my body, I started shaking. Not dramatic trembling, just small, relentless shivers that I couldn't stop. Mara sat on the couch carefully, like it might bite her, and watched me with the same steady gaze she used when reading an engineering report. You're crashing, she said. I'm fine, I lied. She didn't argue. She just held out her hand. I took it because my pride was gone and my fingers were cold. Lewis drove us to the emergency vet first because Buddy was breathing faster than normal, and I couldn't handle the thought of him suffering because he'd protected me. Vet clinic smelled like disinfectant and anxious animals. The waiting room was half full. A woman with a cat carrier wrapped in a towel, a guy with a limping pit bull, a teenager holding a rabbit in a shoebox with holes punched in it. Buddy leaned into my leg the whole time, trembling. The receptionist asked what happened, and Mara said, he was kicked. I added, during a break-in. The receptionist's eyes flicked up, but she didn't ask questions. She just handed us forms and told us to wait. When the vet finally examined Buddy, she palpated his ribs and shoulders with practiced hands. Buddy tolerated it until she pressed near his right side. Then he flinched hard. Pain response, she murmured. He may have a bruise or a minor rib injury. I want to do x-rays. When they took him to the back, I sat in the plastic chair and stared at the floor tiles. My wrapped foot throbbed in time with my pulse. Mara sat beside me, scrolling through her phone with one hand, wiping pepper spray residue from under her nails with the other. You ever met Nolan's girlfriend? She asked suddenly. My head lifted. He has a girlfriend. I don't know. I'm searching, she said. Public records, social media. He's an IT contractor. He's lived here 8 months. No obvious family. Why? Mara's jaw tightened. Because people like that don't do this for no reason. And I don't like not knowing what else he has. I thought about the cameras, the phone flash, the word he'd used, insurance. What if he uploaded stuff? I said. Mara nodded once. Exactly. That possibility sat between us like a heavy object neither of us could move. Buddy came back an hour later with a shaved patch on his foreleg and a bandage, looking offended and exhausted. The vet said no fractures, likely bruising, maybe a minor muscle strain. Pain meds, rest, monitor his breathing, come back if he worsened. I wanted to cry with relief, but my body felt too wrung out to produce tears. Lewis drove us to the ER next. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was clipped. I'm sending you the bill for the door, he said at one point, staring straight ahead. I deserve that, I said quietly. He exhaled hard. You scared the hell out of my wife. I'm sorry. He didn't respond, but a few minutes later he said, almost grudgingly, I heard the crying too, in the hall, before you kicked in my door. I thought it was someone's kid visiting. My throat tightened. That mattered. In a legal sense, maybe. In a reality sense, definitely. Thank you, I said again. The ER was bright and relentless. My foot got irrigated, stitched, and wrapped in a way that made it look like someone had replaced it with a marshmallow. They gave me antibiotics. They asked if I'd had a tetanus shot. They asked if I felt safe at home. That question broke something open in me. I hesitated too long. The nurse's expression softened. It's okay if the answer is no. I glanced at Mara, who was sitting in a plastic chair with an ice pack pressed to her cheek, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. No, I said finally. I don't. They gave me a pamphlet, as if safety could be printed and folded. By the time we got back to the building, daylight had started leaking into the city. The rain had returned in a thin drizzle. Everything looked normal in the cruel way mornings do after something bad happens at night. Cars parked, a jogger passing with headphones in, someone walking a golden retriever like it was any other Saturday. The only proof was the cracked doorframe of 1A and the police tape on my door that fluttered slightly in the draft like a small flag. Mara insisted I not go back inside alone, so we went to her place instead. Her apartment smelled like coffee and clean laundry. No hidden corners, no couch that felt watched. She made Buddy a bed out of 2 blankets and a pillow, and he collapsed like his body had finally remembered how tired it was. Mara charged her phone, then sat at her kitchen table and started writing a list of things we needed to do like she was planning a project. Call landlord, document break-in, request locks changed. Ask police for case number. Get statement from Lewis. Request building security check. Buy a new door camera, not a baby monitor. Vet follow-up. Follow-up. Replace couch. She paused at that one, then underlined it. I watched her write and felt a strange mix of gratitude and shame. What about the address Greg gave? I asked. Mara's pen stopped. I called the non-emergency line, she said. They said units did a welfare check. And her mouth tightened. They said they can't tell me details, but they didn't sound alarmed. That's not an answer. No, she agreed. It's not. My stomach churned. A newborn somewhere across town. A video file on Lewis's phone with today's timestamp. Greg's monitor feed showing a crib at an angle. The thud, the footsteps. It could all be pieces of the same thing, Nolan manufacturing panic with stolen footage and planted devices. It could be nothing more than a sick hobby, control, voyeurism, manipulation. Or it could be something worse that we'd only grazed. Mara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, then at me. What? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She stood and walked to the window like she needed distance from the sound. Then she said, It's a voicemail. My skin prickled. From who? Unknown number, she said. My heart started pounding again, fast and ugly. Mara hit play on speaker. The voicemail crackled with that familiar thin hiss, like a radio tuning in. For a moment, there was nothing but static. Then a baby's cry, soft, tired. The same hitching breath. Mara's face went very still. The voicemail lasted 12 seconds. No voice. No message, just crying. Then it ended with a click. We stared at the phone like it had become something else. That's impossible, I whispered. Mara's jaw worked. Not impossible, just, she swallowed. He could have recorded it. He could be messing with us. But he's in custody. Is he? She snapped, then immediately softened. He was detained. We don't know what happened after. I felt my lungs tighten. The room seemed smaller. Buddy lifted his head from his blankets, ears twitching, as if he'd heard the cry too, even through the phone speaker. He whimpered once and put his head back down. Mara deleted the voicemail without looking away from me. Like erasing it could make it less real. Then she opened her settings and blocked unknown callers. "We're done being reachable," she said, voice tight. I sat down slowly on her couch, careful with my foot. The morning light through her blinds made stripes on the wall. It should have felt safe. Instead, it felt like the moment after you turn off a loud machine and your ears keep ringing anyway. I thought about Nolan's smile in the lobby. Not triumphant, not even angry, just certain. "Evan," Mara said quietly, sitting beside me now, "we're going to do this right. Police, landlord, paper trail. We get your locks changed today. You don't go back alone." I nodded, because it was the only way to keep my breathing steady. Outside, someone laughed on the sidewalk. A car door shut. Ordinary sounds. Inside, my body held on to the memory of a baby crying where there shouldn't be one. And somewhere, in some server or some device we hadn't found yet, I couldn't shake the sense that a file existed with my name on it. Not a ghost, not a curse, just proof that privacy can be taken quietly and returned only in pieces. That's it for this nightmare. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on notifications. It really helps keep the stories alive. And don't stop here. Dive into another one of our videos and keep the fear going.